internet.
Yeah, no worries.
No, I'm right there on Harvey Street.
Okay, it is
Renee.
6 o'clock.
Morning.
It's a minute after 6. I can call the meeting to order. This is the Tuesday, January 6th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And could we have a roll call, please?
Brown,
Present.
Marshall,
Present.
Rusha,
Present.
Shaw Nolf, present, Stein, present.
Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of the August 5th, 2025 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion or are there questions?
I move to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Oh, I second it, sorry.
It's been moved by Ms. Stein and seconded by Ms. Shaw Nolf to approve the meeting minutes of August 5th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Stein,
Yes.
Shaw Nolf,
Yes.
Rusha,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Brown.
Stain, I was absent.
Approved.
Mhm.
All right, I just, before we move on, I just want to welcome our new board member, Ernst Rusha, who's a resident of Lake Street. Thank you for stepping up. Okay, next on the item list is public comment. Anyone in the public wish to speak? Is there anyone online, by the way?
There is not, other than our attorney Laura.
Okay. No, that's okay. Next is new business. Question A, your item A, interpretation request concerning the lot coverage requirements for an accessory structure, section 1703.
The board is being asked to provide an interpretation of how a required rear yard is intended to be applied in section 1703(3) of the zoning ordinance, which reads, building accessory to residential buildings shall not occupy more than 25% of the required rear yard, provided further that no accessory building shall exceed the ground floor area of the main building. You'll see in your agenda memo, there are definitions in our ordinance for rear yard as well as setback, and those definitions were provided. However, we do not currently have a definition for required rear yard. So that is what is prompting this inquiry or an interpretation by the board. Sorry, Laura.
All right, the power of being unmuted.
I know, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add to what Lisa said, although it doesn't say it explicitly on the agenda, these are done as public hearings. So there should be a, opening a public hearing and time for public input on these as well.
I'm sorry. I didn't quite get it.
So she's saying you have to have a public hearing. So you'll have to
Open the public hearing.
open the public hearing and close the public hearing.
All right, so, before we discuss it or after we discuss it?
Before you need to receive public comment, you can receive staff input and any comments or questions that you want to solicit from me. But then before deliberating and making a decision, you should open the public hearing for anyone who is present to speak on each item separately. So do the interpretation first and then the variance requests.
Okay. So, we're not going to do a public hearing until we discuss it, right?
You're going to start discussion, yes, on the interpretation of the ordinance.
What are the questions that anyone might have?
I have a question.
Okay.
How often have you run across this required rear yard?
I have not encountered language like this.
Lisa, have you run across it before?
I mean, in our ordinance, yes, obviously. Most of the structures that we deal with in the city are smaller. They're sheds, that sort of thing. They're not larger structures. That's not to say we don't have them, but typically they're smaller sheds, that sort of thing.
Well, how often has this been a challenge?
I can't speak to my predecessors. I don't know. I mean, since I've been in this position, I had one this last winter, earlier this winter, I should say, that inquired about putting one in the required rear yard, and I used my interpretation of
Of the required.
the setback multiplied by the width of the lot.
So you I'm not, this is an observation, not a
The
criticism,
ordinance as I interpret
is
it.
with,
It's the width of the parcel
right?
times the required rear yard setback.
So there's-
minus-
So there's two, if I can, do you want me to present a little bit, Lisa? And I'm gonna kind of cover what's in your, because it can be confusing. Typically, when you have a term like this, it's going to be defined in the zoning ordinance. And the reason that there's an interpretation request, which was frankly at my suggestion, rather than having staff interpret it for the applicant, to have the ZBA exercise its power to interpret it because it's not defined in the zoning ordinance. Rear yard is, but not required rear yard. And when we add a word like required, we presume it means something. Otherwise, there would be no need to add that word. So the two sort of competing viewpoints that are before you, and I'll let the applicants will have a chance to speak as well. But let's take an example, and it's not necessarily this property, but just for ease of round numbers. And you're in R2. In R2, the rear yard setback from the house is 35 feet. So you got to have 35 feet between your house, right, Lisa? Correct me if I'm wrong. That's how I read it, right? 35 feet from your house to the rear lot line. Let's say your house is actually 40 feet from the rear. So you're further back than you need to be. When we talk about lot coverage for an accessory building, and we're talking about the required rear yard, the zoning administrator or staff's take would be, we're measuring it based on the width of the lot times 35 feet, which is what would be required to be rear yard. You have to have at least that much. Versus what I perceive the applicant's interpretation to be, which is no, you take the actual rear yard, which is 40 feet from the house to the rear lot line, and multiply that by the width of the lot. The difference in interpretation here and the position that staff has presented is required rear yard means what is required in the zoning ordinance. You have to have that 35 feet times the width of the lot. If you actually have 40 feet, well, buildings could be anywhere, it could be 50 feet, then we don't know what required rear yard is. It's going to differ depending on which parcel you're looking at. Required rear yard is always going to be the same in that zoning district. So those are the two different interpretations of required rear yard that you have perhaps the unfortunate duty of deciding what those mean. It's possible in the future that Planning Commission and City Council could amend the ordinance to clarify it, but we don't have the benefit of that now, and we have an application before us that needs to be decided. You have the power to interpret. It's one of the powers that the law gives to the Zoning Board of Appeals, as well as the zoning ordinance gives you that power. And whatever interpretation you make of this term in this case would be binding. Unless and until the language of the ordinance itself is amended, it would be binding on other applicants in a similar situation. So I hope that's a little bit helpful. I'm happy to answer questions.
So if a lot is wider or a lot is deeper, then all of a sudden their required rear yard becomes larger. Based on, that's the way I'm hearing this interpretation. If I've already got setbacks. I already have to meet the side setbacks. I already have to meet a depth setback. So if my lot is bigger, you're applying a formula that it's like a redundant formula that's varied. It feels like it's varied dependent on the width. Your 35 feet is your depth. Your width is your setbacks. And then
No, your depth or your width is the width of the lot itself. The depth would be the setback.
that's established. When you buy a house or unless it's a new construction, that width is established. To build on it, you have setbacks. And you have to stay within those setbacks. Well, always the required, what are we trying to achieve with this required rear yard when we
Sure.
already have setbacks and we already have a depth? What's our purpose in adding another layer of interpretation or another layer of requirement when the lot sizes can differ.
So this comes into play with the requirement in the ordinance that the accessory building not take up more than 25% of the required rear yard. So you're right, the number of square feet that will constitute 25% is going to differ based on the width of your lot. That's how the ordinance is written. Under either of the interpretations before you today, the actual square, amount of coverage allowed in square footage is going to depend. And it should, right? If it's a percentage, a much larger lot can bear a larger accessory building as long as it doesn't exceed the size of the main building, right? So yes, it does vary, but
Can I interject one point? As an architect, I understand. The point is, if my lot is 200 feet deep, then it doesn't change your argument at all.
so I'm not, are you
It'll remain the same width.
More than the lot size, cause it's what,
she's saying
yeah,
lot
if
size.
you're, everyone's gonna be stuck at 35 feet. And the only variable you have on the width, so
Is the
let's say
width.
you got a lot, but it's really deep, then you're out of luck, cause you're still stuck with 35 feet.
Correct. And that's not that part, the 25% is not before the ZBA today. I mean, that's just in the ordinance. We don't have the ability, in the variance part, we can talk about that. But for the interpretation, that's not something, I mean, it is what it is. It's 25%.
Can I ask, Lisa, or you, Laura, given the different interpretations, how does it change the way we would look at it? If we would accept the applicant's interpretation, how does that change in a concrete way what we are looking at?
Then they could have a bigger accessory building.
They could have a bigger accessory building.
So you could have the same square footage of yard, but depending if your lot is long versus wide is gonna make the difference.
No, that 35 feet is a fixed
Yeah, but if you-
dimension.
That is, but your width isn't. So if you have a narrow
Right.
yard,
But lesser setbacks.
but let's say you have a bigger, like 100 feet or something, you still can't count that. You can only count the 35 feet. But if you're 100 wide by 35 deep, then you're good.
Yeah, and if you were 25 feet deep and you were 100 wide,
Right.
you wouldn't meet the required.
So the question is, what is intended by the required rear yard verbiage in the ordinance? That's what has to be
I don't
determined.
see it at all. I see a setback being a reasonable expectation, and I see a rear yard being a reasonable expectation. But to determine a required rear yard based on an arbitrary, how wide is your lot, which is going to differ between everybody, we'd have no consistency.
So you can't, let me jump in first. I want to make sure we have the public hearing before we deliberate. You can't legally just decide that we're not going to apply the lot coverage requirement. Because there is.
But we don't know what it is, Laura.
Yeah, you have to interpret whether you are calculating that 25% based on from the width of the property by 35 feet or the width of the property by however many feet it is to where their property is. That's the interpretation question. If the ZBA believes the ordinance should be different, and I know the ZBA did this, I think, before in another case, you can petition the planning commission or ask the planning commission to entertain an amendment. But the interpretation is not, should we just not apply the lot coverage requirement at all? I'm bound by it, Lisa's bound by it, the ZBA is bound by it, and the applicant is bound by it. Your role is to interpret it, and you can interpret that in either way that you believe is founded on the text of the zoning ordinance, because it will apply to everyone, not just these applicants. But I think it might be helpful to let the applicants, to open the public hearing and hear from the applicants and any public comment as well.
All right, so I'd like to open a public hearing to give the applicants an opportunity to speak to this item.
Say their name.
Oh, please state your name and your address.
Yes, my name is William Fahey. I am an attorney representing the applicant, Jane Schneider, who lives at 713 Grove Street. All right, and I think that the answer to this whole thing is pretty easy. And I want to, first of all, ask you all to rewind where you've been so far, because your attorney did not even come close to stating what our theory of this interpretation is. I'm going to make it a whole easy by giving everybody a picture. And this is Jane's lot. And on her lot, I've shown you what I believe should be the definition.
You have one more?
Yeah, I do, I have. And one more. What should be the definition of the required rear yard? So far, I think we all understand that the required rear yard is that minimum rear yard that the property has in order to comply with the rear yard setback. And that's 35 feet. So you measure from the rear side of the house, measure back 35 feet, and you have this green hatched area. That is the required rear yard. So then you look, okay, and I think that's pretty straightforward. I doubt that even your attorney or you would disagree with that. That's the required.
That's not the setback, though,
No, the setback is 35 feet, which
from the property line.
you would measure from the property line, but
Okay,
but-
I just want to make sure.
right, no, absolutely, I agree with you. But this is, if I was looking at this lot and was trying to decide, oh my gosh, what's the minimum amount that Jane needs for her rear yard? That would be it, 35 feet. So that's the words required rear yard refers to that area. So now we have to look at the section of the ordinance that we're interpreting, and it says, buildings accessory to residential buildings shall not occupy more than 25% of a required rear yard. That means you look at that green area, and if your proposed accessory building occupies more than 25% of that green area, then you can't do it, or you need a variance.
So quick question, where is the 35 feet from the house back coming from? Where is that measurement identified in the ordinance as, other than the setback requirement?
I'm trying to help the city out because the city didn't define it.
Right, I'm just asking where your 35 feet came from.
The 35 feet is the rear yard setback.
The setback is from the property line inward.
Understood.
I'm just asking.
Listen to me one more time. If you want to get the minimum rear yard setback for a lot, it would be that 35 feet from the house. That's the required rear yard. The rest of the rear yard is optional.
So you're saying if the property line ended at the end of that green area, that's
That would be.
That's your
They've got
minimum required.
They've got the required rear yard, they're
and
good.
everything else is.
But it
extra.
happens that Jane has a lot more than that. Hers is not, her rear yard is 79 feet deep. And her proposed garage is not gonna occupy any of the required rear yard. It's gonna be in that back area, completely outside of the required rear yard. And so this section doesn't even apply to her. And we shouldn't be talking about a variance for something that doesn't apply to Jane. There's a lot now, besides the very clear language that I just explained to you, and which this picture demonstrates, there's a lot of reasons why it makes no sense, to interpret it the way that the staff is interpreting. One of the reasons is that it would set a maximum of 437.5 square feet for garages on 50-foot lots in the R2 district. Even if the backyard was 300 feet deep. Wouldn't matter how big your yard was. If it was 50 feet wide, we're so sorry, all you can do is build this tiny garage. And
25% of this green space.
no, what I'm saying is if you have if your lot went back even farther than Jane's,
Right,
let's say it goes back another 300 feet,
but that
she still can't build more than.
because you're basing the 25% on this required rear yard, period.
Right,
Not
because-
setbacks, not.
Yeah, well, see, that's what they're saying. The required rear yard is just this area floating anywhere. not this specific part of the yard, which is the required rear yard, which is the minimum rear yard for any property, 35 feet back from the house. So that makes no sense, that somebody could have a much larger yard and not be able to build a larger garage than a minuscule, honestly, 437 square foot garage. The second reason why it makes no sense is that there's another section that deals with lot coverage of lots. And that says that and this is section 1600 of your ordinance, which says that for lots in this district that are 7,200 square feet or greater, the lot coverage is 33 feet. And it doesn't matter whether it's your main house, it doesn't matter whether it's your accessory garage, or it doesn't matter whether it's extra sheds, you can't have more than 33%, right? So interpreting it the way that staff is interpreting it is like coming out of left field with a whole different rule for lot coverage, which is already covered in 1600. And you don't need another rule for lot coverage if you interpret this sensibly, the way that I think is very clear, the way that I've shown you on this map. Another problem that we have is that, depending on how you read this, you could get a situation where instead of building one garage that does everything that's necessary, you're going to encourage people to have multiple accessory structures. So they'll have a garage that's 437.5 feet, but they'll say, well, now I need another shed over here, I need another shed over here. I'll put this one in the side yard, right? Which
You can't have one in a side yard under our ordinance.
You can't have it in the side yard, and it also states under 17033 that buildings accessory to residential buildings. So more than one building cannot occupy more than.
and that's not clear. It says buildings cannot, doesn't say all the buildings together. It just says buildings. That could be
Accessory
interpreted.
to residential buildings shall not.
Could be interpreted to mean each building is looked at separately.
An accessory building, I think, is different than the main building.
I agree.
And the language that you're citing is
Accessory
accessory
buildings, yes.
So it's
Another
not-
reason why this doesn't make sense is that 437.5 feet is a very small garage. I will concede that it could accommodate 2 medium-sized cars. It's basically a 20-foot, 11-inch square garage. If you wanted to put anything in there besides 2 cars, you wouldn't be able to do it. You probably would have some difficulty opening your car doors. Hopefully, you'd be skinny enough to be able to get out the door without hitting the other car or hitting the side of the wall. Doesn't make sense to have your standard be a garage that's undersized by our standards, by all of our standards. And to support that, there's only 2 other garages that access this same the same alley. And guess what? One of them is 750 square feet, built just in 2008, and the other one is 1,000 square feet. So to say under those circumstances that you should interpret this so you can only have a 437.5 square foot garage does not make any sense. What does make sense is what I've explained to you here. The required rear yard is that area 35 feet back, and that area cannot have more than 25% of it covered by a accessory building. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
I guess it's to you or Lisa, we still have a problem with the rear lot line, correct?
And that's gonna be in the second public hearing under the variance, regardless of how the first one goes, there's still, yeah, that's separate. Could I ask a question? To
I will
council?
allow it.
He'll answer, he doesn't have to answer, I guess. My question, maybe it's for the ZBA just to consider, because I mean, this is an interpretation request. I'm not advocating for one interpretation over the other. That's your job, not mine. What I'm thinking about is I read 1703, where it says buildings accessory to residential buildings shall not occupy more than 25% of a required rear yard. Is whether the drafters of that were concerned about the size of accessory buildings that were really far away from the lot line near the house, or whether they were concerned about the lot coverage or size of accessory buildings that were within the 35 feet from the lot line where it was closer to the neighbors.
Here's what I think the answer to that question is. The answer to that question is we already had a provision for lot coverage, right? That's the 33% number. I think they wanted to have another provision that would keep the size of the accessory buildings that were close to the house at a minimum, right? If you're gonna have an accessory building, this language to me says it shouldn't be close to your home. It should be set on the backside of your lot, which is exactly what Jane is trying to do.
Well, she has that lot. She has that ability to do that. If you were building within that required rear lot, that would set, what I'm hearing you, if you were building within the required rear lot, you would be subject to 25%. And now
The 35.
thank you for the graphic.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm saying.
That would be your limitation is, but she's not even building within that required lot.
That's correct.
So my other comment on this is, just to be clear, although we're talking about this property because they applied for it, an interpretation applies to anybody else who comes seeking to build an accessory building. So if the interpretation is that required rear yard is not in relation to the lot line, but is instead whatever that, in R2 35 feet from the building, that means you could have a large accessory building 3 feet from a lot line that would not be subject to the 25%. I agree, it would presumably be subject to the 33% of all buildings, but would not be subject to that 25% of required rear yard requirement.
Do we have height restrictions? We have setback restrictions? So we have restrictions elsewhere within the code that limits the size of any building built within R2 or any of the areas. So I think the gross square foot, we have this reminds me of that apartment building where he could meet all the setbacks and he could meet everything, but he couldn't meet the gross square footage. And he met the height restriction. So it's this square footage thing, and that's a bigger issue. I know it's a planning issue, but it is.
There is one other restriction that we haven't talked about, but it's in this same section 17033. That is another restriction on that accessory is that provided further, no accessory building shall exceed the ground floor area of the main building. So that's an absolute maximum. If you've got a house. If you got a house that the ground floor is 1,000 square feet, you can't have an accessory building.
So we have setbacks, we have height restrictions, and we have gross square footage based
You
on
have two setbacks.
two setback.
You have a 3 foot
Rear-
and a 5 foot.
You're right.
So you have technically 3 setbacks with the house being there. So you have height limitation on the 3 setback at 14 feet and you have 16 feet at the 5 feet. So that's a limitation. So if you.
Yeah, so it's not
so it's not-
open-ended.
Exactly.
It's not
at all,
open-ended.
at all.
There's plenty of other, there's not plenty, but there's other restrictions that apply that would affect any kind of other building being built as an accessory building.
Under either interpretation, that's a correct statement.
And then there's this overall 33% max. And well, there's 33% and there's 35%, am I correct? Because there's because there's two different size lots. So if you're under 7,200 square feet, you get 35%. If you're over 7,200 square feet, you get 33.5,
33%.
33 period.
33.
Okay.
Yeah, for R2, that's correct. Yeah.
Under 7,200 square feet.
You get 33%.
35%.
5%. And, oh, is that right? Or is it, okay,
And over 7,200, you get 33.
7,200 and up you get.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, again, and that's just R2. This, again, the interpretation would apply to all zoning districts, but
But that
Yes,
includes,
regardless.
your accessory building and your main house. So there's.
Yes.
so
Lot
you-
coverage.
Of lot coverage, period, in total.
There are some districts that do not have lot coverage to requirements,
So what about,
so they would be allowed to build.
so along the alley, behind Division Street, where Dick Smith lives, they all have double garages.
Mhm.
Are they not subject to those coverage issues there?
I'm guessing they predate the ordinance, or at least definitely our current ordinance requirements, so they would be considered non-conforming structures, but they can remain so long as they meet the requirements of section 17.
Do you know when this particular
18.
interpretation was adopted
Of
of this?
1703, there was an amendment in 2015, I believe, otherwise it was original in, I think, 1974.
74.
I'm confident that says 5-foot setback came in the new one, 2017.
That's accessory structures.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
accessory.
I mean, yes, it is for the height, but that, yeah, that would have been in
So that's a
2015.
new one.
That would have been, yeah.
Yes.
I believe it's number 5 through 7 were the 3 that were amended in 2015.
But are there any more comments that the public would like to make on this issue for the public hearing, or shall I close it and we will deliberate? Anyone?
Let me ask, Lisa, is your, on the first page of your memo,
well, to the extent, yeah. You do have an attorney-client privileged memo. You can ask me questions, but I prefer you not read out loud.
My
this
memo.
is yours.
My
Oh,
memo.
Lisa's memo. Okay, great.
Yes,
The section 1703, sub 3. The required rear yard.
Mhm.
And then in defining the rear yard, you're running the width times, you're starting with the back lot line. Is that correct?
yes, my interpretation by the required rear yard area would be the required setback times the width of the lot.
The required setback from the
Because that's
back
what's
property line.
required.
From the house or from the property
No,
line?
from the back
Setback is
property.
required from the property line inward 35 feet. That is what the required setback is. So when you say required yard, what I have been taught and what I have interpreted is that the required rear yard would then be that required area. The
If-
35 feet, that required setback and the width of the lot.
Well, is
To
it
calculate
from the alley or the back property line?
The rear property
The
line,
rear
The
property.
rear property line heading towards the house.
correct.
35 feet.
So the different, I'm sorry.
So it would be this area.
Yeah.
Yeah, where the dashed line is, you'll
So
see it
like the
behind the
house
house from
could
their
be-
back.
And,
Yeah.
but they happen to have that extra space.
That's what
The problem with that is if you just use the back 35 feet, is that means there's no restrictions on the part that's right next to the house.
Yeah, we are trying to deliberate.
Okay.
So Lisa, the difference in these two approaches, it all has to do with what the size of the building can be, right? That's the question, the 25%.
The interpretation we're looking for is what the required rear yard area is.
I know, so the difference is you say you start the measurement from the rear yard line
Correct.
and.
And
Mr.
35
Fahey
feet to the, yeah,
Starts it at the back of the house.
correct.
And starting where you suggest and moving towards the house, this proposed garage would cover more than that 25%.
Correct.
And then there's a variance
Well, that's
request
still
up.
not- The We
Yeah.
have two different locations of 35 feet. One is 35 feet from the house to the back of the lot, and one is 35 feet from the back of the lot toward the house.
Which is why I had asked where the 35 feet from the house back came from, because our ordinance does state that there is a required rear yard setback, which is 35 feet,
Does it,
which is where
does it say from the back property line?
the rear setback does, and that's what I put the
Rear set-
definition for setback, and then as well as rear yard, which rear yard does include from the property line to the structure, that is the rear yard. The setback is the distance from the rear property line in 35 feet, which per our ordinance is a required setback. So when it says required rear yard and not having a definition, obviously, that's what, that my interpretation has been.
So
The applicant is saying they believe it is, or the applicant's attorney is saying he believes it should be from the house out 35 feet, not in from the back property line 35 feet.
just as
So-
a matter of discussion, where does that 35 feet from the back of the lot line hit in their property?
If you look at his drawing, there's a dashed line that says 35-foot rear setback.
Mhm.
That would be across the, the blue line across.
So the
no,
blue,
The blue, yeah,
the blue line, which is the 10-foot setback,
From
the
there
35
north.
setback, and the 5-foot setback is, but see, that line extends
no,
toward the,
it's the 35-foot that goes across the property from there north. It would be just north of the green section,
Yeah, it's a dark blue.
a dark blue
It
line. that
says 35 foot rear
setback.
setback.
So
yeah.
from
Right.
there north would be the required yard setback.
Could I jump in with two more points from the video abyss here? One, it was just touched on, but I wanted to read the definition of rear yard, because rear yard is defined. It's required rear yard as a phrase that's not defined. And rear yard is an open space extending the full width of the lot, the depth of which is the minimum horizontal distance between the rear lot line and the nearest point of the main building. So if the interpretation is to measure it from the house rather than the lot line, then rear yard is going to be measured differently and mean something different than required rear yard. And again, that's not specific to this property. That would then apply to all properties. The second thing I wanted to say is even if the interpretation is not what the applicants are asking for, they do have a variance request up that you will consider next. So even if you find that, yes, required rear yard is measured from the back lot line, that does not mean they're out of luck. That just means you move on to their variance request.
Cause the other thing, measuring from the rear lot line in, it defined with generally. That leaves you, if that house is ever added on to, or your square footage is added on, you wanna put an addition onto the house. That space is not, you're still within, they could add on all the way back to that point, you know, as long as it doesn't exceed, the total square footage of both buildings wouldn't exceed the ordinance.
all the other
So
requirements.
if we measure consistently from the back of the lot line in, that gives that ability down the road, they wanna go and add on to the house or have anything like that, they have that space to add on, do that. So I think, and then, I don't know, they do in the front yard, they talk about impermeable surfaces and all that, we start adding roofs and everything else, you know, that's part of those percentages are an environmental thing, you cover it up, you got water coming down. You know, you don't wanna allow somebody to build the whole backyard on, you know, under roof. So that's, I think, I'm thinking that's what they were trying to do when they did that, but it does make sense measuring it strictly off the back marker, you know. And then like you say, you do have the option of possibly giving a variance if somebody wanted to give a variance.
I think that's generally how the setback is measured from the property line. My issue with, and I understand your interpretation, Lisa, and I think if we were a newer development with, you know, very similar lot sizes everywhere, that would make a lot of sense, but there's nothing consistent in the city, really. I mean, everybody's lot is so different that to me, it doesn't seem like a fair precedent.
And those lots that are narrower would also have the opportunity for a variance because that would be a
Right, they would, I guess, yeah.
a practical difficulty.
Practical
They would,
difficulty.
yeah, they would have that.
Bill, do you have any thoughts?
I have no questions on. I think it makes sense that as she's described, you gotta define the rear yard. It's required. And because the limitations on what you do in that required rear yard, running it from the rear property line makes, to me, inherent sense. Your house and then extending back, that is your rear yard, that's your yard. And limitations, building size wise, percentages of that rear yard. You know, the variance is something different, but that approach to the interpretation of what is a required rear yard makes sense to me.
Sue, do you have anything to add?
No, I thought Ernst's really
Clear?
clear. You cleared it up.
Do we
Thank
need to
you.
have some kind of vote, or how would you like us to proceed?
So yes, you need to have a vote on which interpretation you are going to adopt. Lisa, I can't recall if there was motion language or a decision form for this part.
There was not,
Okay. So I think what you could do is I'm just trying to pull up there we go. The staff agenda. Or memo, excuse me. I think you can make a motion that is essentially either going to be, we interpret required rear yard to be the setback measured from the rear lot line, or alternatively, we interpret required rear yard to be the setback distance measured from the back of the house.
Okay, thank you. Is there someone who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that, that the definition of required rear yard would be determined by measuring the vacant space between the back of the house to the property line by the property width.
So you're going to back of the house.
Going to the back of the house. That's how.
I didn't follow I'm so sorry. I'm trying to write it down. Can you restate that? I heard from back of the house to the lot line, and I think that combines the two.
Yeah, that the required rear yard should basically be the definition of a rear yard. So the distance between the back of the home to the property line by the width of the vacant space of the property.
No, there's a line in there, a 35
Yeah,
foot setback.
It's whether you're measuring the setback, because there's not always going to be exactly.
I know setback.
So sorry, it's not always going to be right exactly the setback from the house to the line. So I think the motion needs to be clear that we're measuring that setback from the rear lot line, or we're measuring that setback from the house.
Do we not have that defined under like definitions of setbacks already?
setback definition is. Sorry,
Go ahead, Lisa. Go ahead.
Minimum horizontal distance measured at right angles from the front side or rear lot line to the vertical plane of the building.
Okay, so yeah, it's already defined as being from the property line then.
Correct. That's the definition of a setback. We're looking for what the
definition
interpretation
of-
is.
Right, right,
required
so
rear
that's why I didn't understand why we have to bring in where the setback's measured from.
Well, there's a second
already
setback
defined.
that we're talking about, and that's the 35
yard.
foot.
So what Laura was saying is you can,
Well, the buildings will still have to be have to follow the code of the
3 foot. and
of
5
the
foot.
setbacks, but we're just defining
The rear
what
yard
is
area.
required rear yard.
we have a measure, the number of feet we have to measure is coming from what that setback is. In R2, it happens to be 35 feet. In determining required rear yard, are we measuring from the lot line or are we measuring from the house?
Well, measuring from the house to the rear lot line is what I'm.
You're measuring.
But that, we think the
35 feet.
whole thing a required rear yard.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking the definition of rear yard is, it should be required rear yard, and we have a separate definition for setback. Maybe someone else should do it.
Is that a building? You're saying that because it's a building setback, but we're basing.
Yeah, I mean, you're
creating square
still gonna
footage.
have to keep setbacks in mind.
Yeah, but we're creating square footage to.
Right, 25%
Right,
of your.
to give us a
vacant-
percentage.
Where did you get, if I can ask, you said rear yard, the definition of rear
Yeah.
yard, is
It's
that?
on your agenda.
It's in your zoning ordinance. It is in the definition section 201.
It's
So,
the third paragraph.
okay, so we already have that definition, it's this word required, which is what's kind of mucking. it.
Right.
The word, yes, correct.
So it would be my opinion that we say rear yard measured from the back property line as per our definition
Yeah,
of rear yard.
that sounds.
And then
That's-
we have
That's-
building.
I mean, that's.
I have to clarify this. You said something different. Your motion, Jessica, was different,
Okay.
correct?
Well, I don't know, it sounded, I mean.
I think
meant to
they
say
sound like they're
what-
saying the
Yeah, it
same
was
thing.
exactly what you said, but.
And then you have a
These
building
different-
setback that's, and we're trying to define it's the word required
Yeah.
that is screwing us
So I
up.
think the definition of rear yard should be the same as required rear yard.
So with that, you're saying it's the space between the lot line and the building.
Primary home, yeah.
But what if you build?
Further back.
Then you have to meet the setbacks of the 35
Yeah, you
feet
still
and the
have to
side, yeah.
meet all
So
those
it's like a
limitations.
it's getting rid of a duplication and it's getting
Yeah.
rid of a definition of square footage.
I mean,
Lot
you still have
coverage
to
is,
do the 25 square feet, you still have your setback limitations, you still have all that.
I agree.
I'm really confused.
Okay, so
Sorry.
Jessica, hi. I think the impact of your motion would have been that it's just whatever the actual yard is, even if that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I originally thought the applicant's interpretation was. I was soundly corrected that that's not their position. So that's not the position they're advocating for, and that's not the position staff took. You could interpret it that way. That would greatly,
Even though that's the definition of rear yard already.
No, it's not exactly. So rear yard is an open space extending the full width of the lot, the depth of which is the minimum horizontal distance between the rear lot line and the nearest point of the main building, but that's unrelated to setback. So the
Right.
required, to give the word required meaning, that's why kind of both positions here are talking about the 35 feet or the setback, because there's a certain amount of rear yard you have to have. And that's what the rear yard setback does. You can't have a rear yard that's, 10 feet in R2, right? There's a required minimum rear yard. That required minimum rear yard is determined based on the setback in that district. So we can't just say it's the rear yard because that makes the word required meaningless.
If we have an empty lot, we have to go 35 feet from the lot line before we could build.
Correct.
So
In
you say-
R2, yes, the rear, it would be a 35-foot setback.
So you say like the rear yard, minimum 35 feet.
Yeah, I'm gonna wordsmith this. Give me 30 seconds here. It's like, and we didn't prepare it in advance, partly because it is up to this ZBA's interpretation, and I didn't want to put words in your mouth. Now I'm kind of wishing I had put a few words down in advance. So what I'm hearing, the motion on, was it Bill on the right hand side? Was that your motion you started to make? Is that required? I'm so sorry.
Me too, it's his first day.
Required rear yard is the minimum rear yard required based on the setback in the zoning district measured from the rear property line. I'll read that again. You guys can change this, but this is what I'm trying to put words to what I'm hearing. That required rear yard is the minimum rear yard required based on the setback for the zoning district measured from the rear property line.
Yes.
To me, that's not clear if it takes in account if you have more than the minimum.
It
So-
doesn't give you more ability to build anything else
Right,
if you
right.
have more yard.
Right, right, and I don't know, I just feel like there might need to be some language to clarify what if you have more than the minimum.
So that's kind of the thrust of this is the zoning ordinance says for these accessory buildings that it can't take up more than 25% of the required rear yard. It doesn't say 25% of the rear yard. In which case I would agree if it were written that way, however big your yard is, 25% of that can be accessory building up to the, 33% total lot coverage cap. But the question before the ZBA is that where the zoning ordinance says the required rear yard, where are you met, that means there's a required amount of yard you have to have based on the setback, and where are we measuring that from? Or are you making it the actual yard, in which case, I think that's kind of eliminating the word required then from the zoning ordinance.
Can we do that?
We can't.
We
You
can't
you will, you can make a record to explain how rear yard means the same thing as required rear yard. Just be cognizant of, that this is not just for this property.
Right.
Is there a standard lot size in R2? Like the 35 feet from the rear property line?
I mean, they vary.
For a reason. As it relates to normal lot sizes, like her lot size is very large.
Mhm. So our current standards for R2 is 60 feet in width, 7,200 square feet in area. Some are narrower, some are wider, some are below 7,200 square feet, some are well above. I mean, we do have a broad range from what I've seen, so. Yeah, it just depends.
Most are deeper than 35 feet.
No, it's the lot area itself has to be 60 feet wide.
No, I know,
7,200 square
but I'm
feet.
saying we have a
Oh.
lot of deep lots.
Yeah, 35 feet is a required rear yard, so you can't build, like the primary structure can't be built any closer than 35 feet to the rear property line.
Right, and now we're putting another restriction on that 35 feet, that it's defining what the required rear yard is to determine the square footage that can be put into that area.
We're not changing what's allowed. I mean, it would change based on what the required yard area is defined as. The setback that's there is for the primary structure, the 35 feet. Accessory structures can be 3 to 5 feet.
No,
or
I know.
They have to be in the rear.
Because
section.
It's
That's a requirement.
It's another restriction,
Sure,
that,
but we have to define or you guys have to define what required rear yard means in our ordinance, because that's what we need to move forward.
Yes, I know. So there was is there any more discussion?
Well, is it back open?
No, not for you.
Well, you said, is there any more?
Well, it's with the board.
nice try.
Is there something that's a problem?
No, I was just asking.
So you started to make a motion. Do you still wish to make a motion?
Someone else can give it a try.
You began a motion. Would you, with Laura's help, like to flesh out?
I think could you read back what you
Yeah.
stated?
That it would be a motion to interpret that the required rear yard is the minimum rear yard required based on the setback for the zoning district measured from the rear property line.
That's your motion?
Yeah, that's my motion.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Would you read the motion again, please?
Yep. Motion to interpret required rear yard to be the minimum rear yard required based on the setback for the zoning district measured from the rear property line.
Thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Yeah. Rusha,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Shawnoff,
Yes.
Stein.
Yes. Okay. Moving right along. We can now go to the second issue. Next month. Okay. Now we're going to talk about case number 880. To hear a request for a side and rear yard setback variances and a lot coverage variance for an accessory structure at 713 Grove Street to allow for the construction of a two-car garage on the existing foundation.
The property is a 7,433.5 square foot parcel at 713 Grove Street between Lockwood Avenue and Harvey Street. The house fronts Grove Street and is adjacent to an alley to the west that runs north and south between Grove and State Streets. The property is zoned R2 single family residential, and the existing structure on the property includes a single family dwelling and a non-conforming garage, which is located at the northwest corner of the property. The garage is non-conforming due to its side and rear yard setbacks from the west and north property lines. The language of section 17024 non-conforming structures is included in your agenda memo and identifies the provisions for lawful non-conforming structures to remain. The property owner applicant is looking to remove the existing non-conforming garage and expand its existing foundation to the south and east to allow for construction of a 630 square foot two-car garage. For the applicant to construct a new structure and expand the existing foundation as requested, the following variances would be required. A side yard setback variance of 1 foot 8 1/4 inches from the side yard setback. Making the side yard setback 1 foot 3 3/4 inches. The required setback is 3 feet. So that difference is 1 foot 8 1/4 inches. That is the same as the existing setback on the west side. The rear yard setback, which is to the north, would be for a variance of 6 inches. Currently, it is 2 feet 8 3/4 inches, and they're looking to reduce that to 2 feet 6 inches, which again would be the 6-inch variance from the 3 foot setback required. And the third one would be lot coverage variance for 7.7% of 7.7% to allow a 32.7% lot coverage of the required rear yard. Just a notation on the addenda memo, there should have been a correction, I apologize, on your variance request table 1. The calculation was 35 feet for the setback, 50 feet for the parcel width. Because this does have an alley to the west, it does get an extra 5 feet of that alley width, so it should have been 55 feet, which makes it the 32.7% instead of 36% as noted in that table. And then the resulting variance is the 7.7 instead of the 11. The current structure has an 18.7%.
So it eliminates the side yard setback. Because you get an extra 5 feet.
No, that's for lot area, not for setbacks. It's for the area itself, so they get to add 5 feet into the width of the lot. Right, for area, not for setbacks, because otherwise they could build out into the alleyway and that wouldn't be allowed. So it is from the property line for the setback, but they get the extra 5 feet for lot area when calculating lot coverage.
Lisa, did the resulting variance request amount change from 11%?
Yes, it would go down to 7.7.
And the causation for that reduction again was what?
So the section 18, I don't know if I wrote it wrong. The ordinance basically allows any property that is adjacent to an alley. They get credit for half of the width of the alley, which our alleyways are 10 feet, so they would get 5 feet plus, in this case, it's the length of the lot, not the width, because it's on the side. So that increases that area.
Yeah, one thing I don't understand about that, they don't just get credit for it. If the alley is abandoned.
No, the alley to the north was abandoned, and that was then absorbed into this property and the property to the north.
Right.
That's not into question. It's the alley that runs north and south to the west of this property. They get credit for that alley.
Oh, so the alley, okay,
There used to be 2, which is not,
right, so
Right.
the alley that goes from Grove Street to State Street is not the abandoned alley.
correct. It's the one that went east and
Okay.
west was abandoned.
All right.
Yes.
So the city still maintains the alley next to your house?
Yes.
So, anyone from the public wish to speak about the variance request?
You wanna open the public- what? You wanna open the public hearing?
It's a public.
Yeah,
hearing.
we open a public hearing.
We have a public hearing on the requesting of the variance on this property. And, I will take some.
William Fahey again, I am representing Jane Schneider, who's the applicant. Would you like me to address all of the variances at once, or do you want to take the side and rear yard first and then the area, the rear yard, coverage variance?
However you're comfortable.
It would be helpful to just do them one at a time.
Okay, that's fine. Do you want to talk about the rear yard coverage first, or do you want to talk about?
decide Just.
The
All right,
rest of it, yeah.
We're show right.
All right, very fine. I want to make sure that we're all comfortable. Let's talk about the side yard and the rear yard setback variances first then. So I understand that the zoning board of appeals applies a 5-point rubric when it is examining variances. And I understand the first point of that rubric is that the applicant, Jane, needs to demonstrate that strict compliance with the 3-foot side and rear yard setbacks would cause her practical difficulty. There are a number of points that I would like to make about this particular lot and the circumstances of it that I think show very clearly why there is practical difficulty here. And as I go through these, just kind of let me first give you an overview of what the practical difficulty issues are. They include the steep slope of the lot and the alley. There's a grade change between the lot and the alley. There is a need for lateral support for the lot itself, the northwestern portion of the lot. And to put that in context, welcome to Petoskey. We decided decades and decades ago to build a city basically on a sand dune. And if we go up this beautiful sand dune, everybody's homes has really nice views of the bay. But we're all on a sand dune, and that sand dune is constantly wanting to go back into the bay. And the only thing that's keeping it from doing that are a very, very extensive series of retaining walls on various people's property that together act to keep the sand dune from going down into the bay. And we're going to talk a lot about that. I'm going to talk a lot about that as I look at Jane's property and why there's a practical difficulty for her, because she is very much affected by that issue. And then the last point, besides the lateral support from the lot, is I want to talk about the need for the subjacent support of the garage walls, the concrete pad, and the driveway. Those are all things that are all at work, at play on Jane's lot. So the retaining walls that are there right now were engineered back in 2020 even though they were originally built 75 years ago, the retaining walls at the northwest corner of this lot, which support the garage, also support the lot. And they were, even though they were built 75 years ago, in 2020, Ritchie's Construction went in. They poured a new pad for the garage. They basically went down next to the existing retaining walls. And they poured in behind them, they poured in a substantial amount of new concrete and put in rebar. So that now is engineered not just to support the garage, but also to support the lot and to prevent the lot from going down into the alley.
And garage.
The retaining walls are actually quite a bit above the alley. So if you go to the northwest corner of the garage, they're about 42 inches above the alley. Substantial drop there. Come back to the front side of the garage, that's about 24 inches above the alley at that point. So there's a very substantial drop off that was designed to support the garage and also to support the lot as a retaining wall. In order to have adequate support for the new garage that's proposed, we can't, I mean, those retaining walls are made and are needed to remain in the spot where they are right now. And the garage walls have to be right over the top of them, or you're going to have problems with forces that are going to push, basically are going to be pushing in the direction of the south and the west. In order to avoid that, you need to locate the new garage walls in the same place where the old garage walls were, because this was engineered to support walls at that location. If you did, say, require the applicant to move the garage walls further east and further south, the problem with that is that now that would compromise the subjacent support for those new walls, because the existing foundation, which is also the existing retaining wall, would no longer be right underneath the walls to support them in a proper way. So that also would not only would you be having some issues with lack of lateral support for the lot, you would end up with issues for subjacent support of the walls themselves. There also are some very practical issues. If you look at the diagram that I gave you earlier,
Yep, I got it.
you'll see that there is, if you relocated the garage to the east, it is going to make it more difficult for Jane to get in and out of her garage. She has looked at a number of different places here on this part of her lot, the back part of her lot, where she could put a garage. And the problem, because of the steepness of her lot and because of this drop off here that exists on the northwest side, it would be extremely difficult for her to get in and out of the garage. In addition, it would require, if she moved the garage further to the east, it would require that a substantial amount of additional driveway hardscape be put on the property in order for her to be able to get her car into the garage. And she's looked at it from a number of different points of view, and she doesn't want to have additional hardscape. And I don't think the neighbors would want to have more hardscape and more runoff from her property. And therefore it would behoove us, I think, to keep that garage in the position where it currently is, above the existing retaining walls. One last point I want to make is that those retaining walls are a part of a larger system of retaining walls, including, there are 8 retaining walls actually on Jane's property. There are additional retaining walls, of course, on other people's properties. All of those retaining walls act together to support the lots and to support the parts of the lots. When you start to mess with one retaining wall, you're going to have an impact on the other retaining walls, and that could cause damage to other people downstream from Jane. The last thing I want to say about the first rubric is I would like to pass out a precedent from the Zoning Board of Appeals that was decided about 5 years ago. Pass that out, please. This was at 621 East Mitchell Street. And I also have some pictures of the garage as it was reconstructed. So you get an idea about this garage. It's closed in. There's a side view and a front view of this garage, which is the garage on East Mitchell Street that back on April 6, 2021, Zoning Board of Appeals granted this piece of property a variance to reconstruct the garage and to reconstruct it on the existing retaining walls that were on that property. And as you can see from this piece of property, if you look at the discussion of the Zoning Board of Appeals back in April of 2021, they were concerned that if you move this garage off of the retaining walls, that could provide some, as I was saying earlier, it could provide some issues with safety and with the integrity of the retaining wall system. I know none of you were here 5 years ago. Well, but not this particular night.
Oh, no, I'm on here.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember this one?
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
Unfortunately.
This is what was allowed to be rebuilt. I don't see very many differences between this and the situation we have here. I think the ZBA looked at the same issues then as I'm describing to you now.
They were reconstructing an existing garage,
Correct.
and this is creating a new garage.
This is, they
No.
were reconstructing but they needed a variance in order to reconstruct, right?
Yes,
Because make any change more than 60% and you
Right.
have to get a variance.
I appreciate that.
Right. And true, that is a difference, but what I'm saying is the issues of practical difficulty in this case are the identical issues that Jane faces on her one.
Except for on this one, they use the existing foundation.
Yes, and that's
So
what
they
Jane
stayed
is
with it.
proposing to do too.
Stayed with the
She-
size.
A percentage of the existing foundation because she's going to a larger structure.
She's gonna use the entire foundation that she has right now, but she's gonna extend it. That's correct.
That's
She's
what
gonna
I,
extend it.
so it's changing. This was built on the same footprint.
True.
And this is not the same footprint. She's using partial of it.
She's
I
using
agree with that.
she's using what she's got now, but the reason why the variance was granted back here was based on those same practical difficulty issues that I just recited to you, and so that's why I'm citing this as a precedent.
So,
But you're right, there's always, every piece of property is unique, right? But there are some similarities that I would ask for you to consider.
So she's gonna use the existing foundation, but she's gonna increase the footprint is what she's requesting.
That's correct.
Just on the east side.
Well, both, because
East
your
and
depth is more also along the alleyway.
That's the way
That's
this little package came, but I could have I'd be fine with having the builder not bring it out I think it's 2 more feet in front.
Okay,
But I do want to be able to have 2 cars to go in there rather than one.
so you have to tie a new foundation into that existing foundation.
Have to extend it, right?
You're gonna pour a new concrete foundation going east. And
Correct.
then also heading to the south
Correct.
and then heading back to the west.
Correct.
That's a new foundation.
Those pieces are new, that's right. But the pieces besides the west and the east, there's no issue with non-conformity. There's no issue there with violating a setback.
Well, you would acknowledge that you're extending a non-conforming use.
Correct.
And you think that that's,
Can't do it without a variance. That's why we're here.
well, I know.
Right.
Uh, Well, you go on. I'm looking for the justification for expanding something that is already been accepted as a non-conforming use. I mean, I would like to have a bigger garage,
Sure, sure.
but the ordinances won't allow it. But I leave it to you now to just address that kind of an issue.
All right. So the second rubric that you all look at is whether or not there's a practical way to accomplish the same purpose without a variance or with a lesser variance. And on that particular point, again, going back to the reason why this variance is being requested is so that the engineered foundation can be used to support the new garage, which is this, it's going to be in the same location as the old garage. Really, there isn't a lesser variance that could be required to do that. That's in order to use the existing retaining walls. This variance is necessary. If you say that she can't use the existing retaining walls, then she's not going to be able to build the expanded garage, period. She needs the variance in order to do this. That's what your second rubric is, I believe. The third rubric is that the need for the variance is due to a situation that is unique to the property and would not generally be found elsewhere in the same zoning district. And here, the issues that are on her property are the extreme slope, grade change between the alley and the lot, and this complex system of retaining walls that I mentioned. Those are all things that are, not every lot in the city faces those issues. There are a few, this is one of those, and that makes this a unique situation that would satisfy that third rubric. The fourth element of your rubric is that the variance would uphold the spirit and intent of the ordinance and be fair to neighboring properties. Here, the location of the west and the north walls would be in the same place. They wouldn't be changing, although they would be extended, they wouldn't be changing. The new garage would be, Jane believes, a substantial improvement and would add to the attractiveness of the neighborhood. It would allow for the indoor storage of an additional vehicle and the indoor storage of items that are currently being stored outdoors. Which is a plus, I think, to the neighbor. It would not impair the use of the alley. And again, if you look at the drawing I gave you earlier, the alley's pinch points, if you will, are really on the Grove Street entrance and the State Street entrance. And basically at the Grove Street entrance, you've got an existing 750 square foot garage that was built 1 foot from the alley on one side, and you have a stone retaining wall on the other side of the alley that's right up cheek to jowl with that is a pinch point at that alley. Compared to that, the area that is available where James' garage would be is much wider. There hasn't been an issue with the width as it currently exists there, and so that's not gonna make that situation any worse. And certainly the pinch point at Grove Street and the pinch point, well, I didn't mention the pinch point at State Street. Basically what exists there is the existing residence there on State Street is built right up to the line, right, not even any setback whatsoever from the alley. So those are the points where there really is an existing narrowness, if you will. And those situations aren't going to change. They're going to continue to be the way that they are,
Non-conforming.
right? They're non-conforming. And so from the perspective of the spirit and intent of the ordinance, it would not be unreasonable to allow Jane to maintain the same setback that she currently has with her existing garage. The last point of your rubric is that the need for the variances was not created by the applicant's actions, and in this particular case, these retaining walls and the present location of the garage predate the zoning ordinance and Jane's ownership, and she had no part whatsoever in creating that situation. So that is what I would say for the setbacks. If I could continue, I will talk about the rear yard coverage variance.
I'm sorry, could we take a little break?
Sure.
We need to use-
Yeah, sounds like a great idea.
Mhm.
I was, take down station, understand. I retired.
That'd be longer than me.
This is.
Oh, you read?
We can still.
Yeah.
That was the physical thing. I think so.
Do you want to vote on that issue first, or do you know? Okay, all right, let me.
I mean, I'm speaking for everyone, but.
Yeah, we usually do it all at.
We deliberate the whole package.
And we have,
Fine. That's fine. Okay, so all I have left to talk about is the section 1703, sub 3 rear yard coverage variance. And again, using your rubric, the practical difficulty under section 17033 is that the maximum what was that maximum number again? 400 and so what was that number?
So 437.50 would be for a 50-foot lot, however,
3750.
hers would be different because of the alleyway. Hers would
did you
be,
say 465?
oh, it's on this page, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one.
Okay, so because it's 55 feet now, she would be able to do how big?
I don't know what sorry, I got my notes on for page. Let me do the math, it's right, sorry.
You said.
Did I say what it was? just forgot.
I wrote down 455, but I think that's what you said.
You know, that one's a 7.72.
481.25.
Yeah.
No.
That's what I get too. Okay. All right, so we're talking now because it's considered a 55-foot lot with that she could build a maximum of 481 0.25 square feet. Let's do a quick calculation. That again,
481.25.
okay, that would mean that the garage could be 21 feet and 11 inches square. So it's about giving about one additional foot to what we were talking about before. The practical difficulty by that is that it really gives Jane insufficient indoor storage for items that that would typically be used and needed for a residence. Things like bicycles and small watercraft, in addition to trying to put 2 cars into the garage. There's no way for, under the second point of your rubric, there's no way to accomplish that purpose without a variance, since section 1703 would not allow a larger garage, even if she went out, even if she had a deeper lot. She's limited by the interpretation that you've made to a, to the size that results. If granted, under your third rubric, the need for the variance is due to the situation of Jane's property. She's got a 55-foot lot. She's got a lot of depth. But the way that you've interpreted the ordinance, she's not gonna be able to build anything bigger than that number. And she needs more area than that. If granted, the variance would uphold the spirit and intent of the ordinance, it'd be fair to the neighboring properties. That's your fourth point. I would point out that there are only two other garages that access the same alley, and those other two garages, one of them is at 714 State Street, and it is 1,000 square feet. The other one is at 623 Harvey, and that is 750 square feet. So there, in terms of the use being made of other garages on that same lot, in that same alley, really that's not going to harm the spirit and intent of the ordinance. And the need for the variance wasn't created through Jane's previous action. The existing one-car garage preceded her ownership. And she's attempting to use her property consistent with the topography and the architectural site arrangements of the lot that she had no part in creating. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I would like to make a comment too. You made the sort of saying, oh, well, I'd like to have a bigger garage too.
Yeah.
The east wall of this garage is rotting now. And it is not even straight up and down. I'm not sure exactly how old this garage is, but I know there was a barn on the exact same spot starting about 1903, which is when the house was built. And I know that owner bought his first car and then he had 2 horses for a carriage before. He was a minister who had to go around to 5 counties and set up Sunday schools. And so he put a lot of miles on it. And he bought a car though in, I think it was 1934. I know this because I corresponded with his grandson who wrote a book about him. And so, and anyway, I have a photo where he was, it showed the barn in the winter, and it's exactly the spot that where the garage is. So it's very old. And so, and it needs to be either I put a whole bunch of money into it, shoring it up. And I thought, well, if I could, add 8 more feet and then have room for 2 cars and also have, and I feel very responsible for this lot and this home. When I have made improvements, I made sure that the windows, although they were updated, they were the same size and shape and, type of thing that was done before. I've really tried to honor what was original, it's a very historical building. And so what I was trying to do is to repair the garage. But I could see the need for a little more space, just going one way. You kind of have to get the contractor had a sort of like, let me choose from a whole bunch of things, but it's just a little bit more, coming forward. It's like I said, 8 feet one way, and then I think 2 feet coming forward. That's the only difference, but it would make a huge difference in the total appearance and the value of the whole thing. If it was, just the 1-car garage, some people would just say, no, that's not going to work for me. So that's all I was trying to do. But clearly there is no reason to remove the walls that are holding up. It's quite a bit of a downhill going from the Lees and the Hunters home. lots or properties on our east going down to that alley. So to me, that it would be foolish to remove that. And
I would like to add something too. Jane is a great steward to this home.
You state your name and address.
Oh, sorry, my name is Deb Cadu, 721 Grove.
Thank you.
Jane has been a great steward to this home and this neighborhood. And she deserves a 2-car garage and be able to put a garbage can inside the garage. Thank you.
yes, it got blown away when I came back from a little vacation. I don't know who found it and stuffed it under one of my lawn furniture. So yes, I do need some space.
I have a question about the setbacks. I know you said there's the retaining walls and those are the ones you said are indicated here on the site plan on the east side. But is it, I mean, since you're rebuilding and you're expanding that foundation, can't it just all move over a couple feet to meet the current setbacks? And you'd still be able to leave those retaining walls?
Well, I don't, the retaining walls are gonna, if you leave the retaining walls there, I don't know how you would, cause if there's a wall and then as he mentioned, when they, before they poured the new flooring in the garage, which I'd hoped to keep, was just gonna add on to it that
Right.
last 8 feet. But, they dug up all the way down to the bottom of this foundation. I'm obviously it goes below the ground. They dug all the way down there and it was, quite wide and they dug it out, poured in concrete, put in re-rod and had that connect with the thing. I don't know how you would get all that out. I mean, you would have to take away a good part of probably about 10 feet in altogether and I don't.
So you couldn't just start the building, a couple feet over from where the existing one is? 'Cause it looks like you have.
Has to have a
Right.
Underneath the wall, you
Yeah.
have
Has
to
to have a
have,
foundation too.
you have to have the.
Footings.
So Jason.
Right, that's why I didn't know, since you're adding on, I mean, if that's something that could be factored into the
But
addition.
it wouldn't make any difference for the clearance for the alley if that,
From the existing, but I was talking about to bring it into compliance if we had the opportunity.
well, building, what you mean, just to take out all that retaining wall and
Well, it's hard for me to visualize the retaining walls because we don't have photos, but looking at the site plan and the size of the proposed and where the setbacks, where they should be by today's zoning. It's like, and you're adding on a new concrete pad, onto the south and to the east anyway. Is it possible to start the building a couple feet over?
I don't believe that would be sufficient. It would have to be, all that concrete would have to be torn out. Because that has to have a foundation wall too under it. And it's quite high, it's about 4, it's about 4 foot high.
I don't know if this is a ZBA question or not. but
No.
Have you checked with Emmett County that foundation, if the variance was approved,
Yeah,
would they approve that foundation?
I don't know if that's a requirement, but no one has, the contractor has looked at it.
I just appreciate that. I'm just, Emmett County, because we did issue this and then Emmett County comes in and says, that's not an acceptable foundation. You have to bring it, you have to put it. I don't know. I'm not builder. I'm not looking at it. I'm just wondering if they've even looked at it.
Yeah, please.
I have to address that same question on the legacy home plans on the garage drawings. They're not showing the retaining wall. You are actually building using the retaining wall and the footings of that retaining wall and building on top of that retaining wall. I can't,
The current garage is that way.
right, but on the elevations, I'm not seeing any retaining wall. And it's an observation, I get, is the front elevation faces the house, right? So you're coming up from the alley and you're driving straight through. So the left elevation and the rear elevation would have that retaining, would have you're building on top of that retaining wall, is what I hear, but I'm not seeing reflected
That's
in
correct.
these
And the
drawings.
reason for that is that I believe that, that the builder just uses stock. He just used his stock, plan, right? Because he wasn't, we're just looking at the setback issue. We aren't looking for
Okay.
for the construction code compliance here. So he just gave you his stock plans.
But but I'm sorry, because when I look at both of these, both the survey and your adaptation or your, I can't figure out what's the retaining wall. Is that there, because there's,
Foundation.
but there's something here and then there's something here.
Okay, so the retaining wall.
What is
that exists,
this? What is this?
That is, the setback right now. So this.
So here's the retaining wall
This
and
wall,
here's.
yes, this wall actually starts at the corner of the lot,
Mhm.
goes all the way back and actually goes a few feet beyond where.
That little line right there.
Yes, beyond where the garage
Okay.
is. So it already extends all the way out over here.
Okay.
It's supporting the driveway
Mhm.
as well as the
Okay.
concrete pad.
Okay, so the second foundation shown of the existing garage is not currently on the retaining wall or is considered to be part of the retaining wall?
It's kind of, it's.
It would be
Stepped
considered, I'm Jonathan Lee, the neighbor to the east, and I'm 715 Grove Street, blah, blah, blah. So up the hill, we're the side up the hill, directly right there. And the distance between that corner that you're talking about. Yeah. So the thing you're talking about is this corner right here, and I'm right here on this property. This space from here, level of ground, I drink too much coffee, that's why I shake so much. Is 10 feet of fall at a minimum
Mhm.
from here, if I do the calculations of the numbers, I just did them. And so the real key problem that we're gonna have here, if you move the building.
Oh, I get the problems. I
If you're
just
gonna-
didn't,
if you're
I
gonna move-
couldn't
if you're
see, I
gonna
couldn't
say-
interpret the drawings.
You know, I've sat with her and I've said, hey, what if, I'm gonna be devil's advocate in her living room with her, and I'm gonna say, why can't you just move the building here? And I'm saying to her, this is why you can't, because what happens is, this was created of some sort of barnyard a long time ago. I'm not telling you when, but there's a retaining wall here that separates you from the building from the north, right? And there's a trough in there. So once we start disturbing that, we're gonna have a cascading effect from 616 effect here. And this is a real steep slope that's gonna wash right down into here. And anything you do here, if we disturb, like, make it, we have to be very careful and do it as least as possible, okay? So the point being is this wall is really key to supporting, it's kind of like the keystone in an arch. When you're gonna pull that out, then the keystone kind of is like, oh crap, now where we're gonna support the arch. Because this is just, it's literally sloping steeply downhill right to that corner, right? So now if we disturb that, so let's just talk about the corner of the building. So if we disturb that, then in other words, to answer your question, let's just move it over 2 feet, then we got it. It's no problem, which I would totally say, you know, less headache, let's go around, let's not do a variance, right? Well, I'm suggesting to Jane, we don't really want to disturb that. You really don't, unless you want to have a cascading effect. And she's coming over here, let's say right to this crease line. And so what allows you to do that is less impact to this hillside condition, which is already retained, and all of that will have to be redone. So that's really the hardship. It's really becoming an unraveling of this retaining wall. This isn't retained behind this building on Gary's property, and it's eroding underneath it. So so this is the only thing holding him back, literally. And then on Gary's northern land, there's another retaining wall that is significantly taller, that is to the north of him. It's like probably 6 feet tall or 8 feet tall. And so this whole corner was built up from the lots on Lake Street. That whole corner where the engineer used to live and where he built his garage on a retaining wall back there that would be on the corner of Lake and Lockwood. That garage there creates a retaining wall for 616. So there's this sort of jumble of retaining walls that has evolved over 100 years, literally. And I'm not making it up just to scare everybody. No, I'm trying to paint the picture so that you see what we get to live with every day. Like on our property, we created a retaining wall here, 3 feet off, that created the corner here at the another retaining wall. Basically, because we had no yard, it washed into her yard and everything, all our water basically dumped into their property. So when you move this keystone, water, I worry that what's going to happen is erosion will happen here. I may be painting, I'm not trying to paint that bad picture, but what happens in my retaining wall is the soil erodes it underneath, and I have to continue hope that her soil doesn't go any farther away, but it does. Over 25 years, I've lost 6 inches of elevation in the retaining wall. It's gone downhill, and it wasn't an insignificant retaining wall that we built. So that's the sort of, the sand in the hourglass, that this little point, as weird as it is, I feel strongly that she's doing the right thing by just leaving that corner alone.
I think that's what Jessica was saying, is can they leave the retaining wall but move the building
Yeah.
instead?
Okay, so then,
Yeah, removing the building wall to start in.
yeah, but okay,
Yeah.
so the problem is to creating a trough.
And that's
And
where
so-
water would love to live.
And that's what happens, and that points out the condition that happens in my retaining wall. I don't have a building on it because it's at the edge of the property, because you can't build a building on it. So what happens is it undermines it over 27 years. And it's not a lot. I can live with it, but I will have to lift it and then re-put dirt and stone back into it. And so that's the condition that I'm just saying can be avoided if we leave that corner alone. Just that sweet corner right there is what is if you could build the building on top of that retaining wall, what it does is it ultimately protects that retaining wall from now till, as it has been for 100 years. It keeps the water out of the area behind that retaining wall, so that pneumatic pressure, which means water, ice, freezing, thawing, doesn't allow it to explode. And that's what has stabilized that for so long, is the fact that the roof has been there. That's why I strongly, from my professional point, is that whether you're going to have a retaining wall there or a garage there, it doesn't really matter. What really matters is to secure that corner. that doesn't allow, as you know, we have lots of ice, lots of water. Climate we live in,
Oh,
I don't
every
need to
time
say.
it rains, there's sand on all the sidewalks. I mean, it's just, you know, it just, it's.
Right, so I'm as from a professional, as an architect, I would like to protect that corner. As an allowance to basically support the rest of us uphill from the condition that. I'm not saying that it'll erode down into your yard, but eventually.
That's
ease
not
down.
to talk, because I'm the next one down. So that corner
Yeah.
is, and I'm kitty corner on Harvey Street, but mine is the part where I park is on the alley.
So Linda, just real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, you know me.
I do, your
Yes,
address, please.
Linda Guthrie, 611 Harvey.
Thank you.
Okay, so, so I've been there for 50 years. And my original parking spot was a carriage house. And I've discovered horseshoes and nails and everything. So there was a stone wall. And that's the stone wall that's on the one side up on Grove Street. The other stone wall is down on State Street. And those have been there for hundreds of years, and that's why they're close. They were predated to variances. So, every time it rains, the water comes down the hill and with sand with it. And, the city came in and paved the alley and put a lip on it so that it runs down to State Street and into the sewer system. So before they did that, it would run all down into my yard. And it happened, the same thing happens on Harvey Street, downhill from Grove. My neighbors, it comes down the sidewalk into my yard. So I've had to put plants and stuff to slow things down. So, but yeah, so if that retaining wall, yeah, that's gonna affect me.
The retaining wall is functional now.
It
correct?
needs to stay.
It needs to stay.
It's functional, and I would add on to it that it has the wall on top of it, protecting it.
Protecting it.
I mean, whether there would be a garage there or not, if it were a house there, you wouldn't move it either, because even if it was non-conforming,
Right.
because of that, because of protecting that corner, it's so crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the other thing is the stone wall that was the carriage house.
Mhm.
I replaced that in 1980. And it was, Bryce Dennis came in and built the big retaining wall with the big cement blocks and put a cement pad there to park on, not just dirt. So, but that has been there since 1980.
Right.
So that's,
Okay.
I have a question. You have you were doing some calculations that, I guess it was the maximum permissible size. I mentioned 21 feet, 11 inches. Remember?
Yeah, I just did the square root of 481.25 is 21.937, and that's approximately
So that's-
11 inches.
Is that the, essentially 22 feet,
Close
close
to
to by
20
22 feet, rather than 25 by 25?
Correct.
Is that acceptable? Could you live with that? I'm just asking.
The,
22 by 22 instead of 20,
Just
using that same corner, building on that corner.
the 22 from, taking off from the front of the garage, I would say yes, but as far as using the plans that this contractor had, because this is, it's dependent, on the width. So, that would be all different trusses and all that sort of thing. So I don't know about that. It could be made a little shorter.
where your garage doors are 16 feet together.
Yeah. Haven't looked at that for a while.
And as you said, this is just a stock plan.
Right,
So it changes your clearances on the sides of the garage, it changes the workspace and storage space behind.
so, yeah, and so this is, yeah, that's what I just said. I could do, I don't, well, it's right now, it's more than 20 foot deep. I think it's 20 and a half. But it's, but certainly it doesn't need to be any deeper than what it is right now. I think I could live with
Your
that.
existing garage.
Pardon?
Doesn't need to be any deeper than your existing garage.
Correct.
You believe it has to be wider.
It would, yeah.
So are there any questions board members have for the applicant and people? Shall we discuss this then?
Yeah.
We'll have to close the public hearing.
Or we're going to close the public hearing. Thank you very much. Take it back to the board to discuss and make some determinations. Anyone have a thought to share? I can start because I've been listening else. I understand that you want a bigger garage. There's nothing in our zoning ordinance which entitles anybody to a garage or a bigger garage. Some people don't have any garage. So we're being asked to, and this is where I struggle, despite the fact I think it would be lovely to have a bigger garage, to increase the nonconformity of a nonconforming structure by making it wider, by extending the coverage and the side yard and the rear yard. And that's my struggling point. So I don't know if anyone else has that. I know that the case you cited with the former garage that was done, that was reconstructing on the site. So Jane, you said that you have a wall that's rotting, right? If you came and you said, I want to rebuild the garage, and I've been told that I have to have a variance, that would directly apply and correlate with this past case. But you're asking for increased nonconformity, which is slightly different.
That's what I have a problem with too. It would be, I understand the logic is the desire to have a more functional accessory building. We have these guidelines, these restrictions that we must comply with in assessing whether a variance should be granted. We know you didn't create the existing structure.
But there's
Moving beyond, moving the non-conforming permitted use to further expand the non-conformity, if a variance were to be granted, that's a problem that my training on these things indicates we have to proceed very cautiously because there's fidelity to the zoning ordinance that only in frankly rare and compelling cases would a variance be appropriate. And maybe folks have, the board have different feelings of that. This is such a compelling case. Expanding the size of a garage in order to accommodate the, I think it calculated that you could squeeze 2 cars in there, but even if you couldn't, the idea of I want a bigger garage to, well, whether they're watercraft or toys or bicycles or what, that of course isn't a compelling reason for the granting of a variance. It's like it wouldn't grant a variance because the homeowner wants to put up a fence so his dog has more room to run around. You do have unique topography. Rebuilding is a viable thing on your existing foundation and utilizing some, I don't know if they're mobile storage units to place elsewhere on the property is just something that comes to mind at a practical level. If you rebuild your existing garage to preserve and make use of it, it wouldn't give you the additional space that obviously you're seeking here. But I'm struggling with what is the actual practical difficulty that you're experiencing that compels the variance. Having that bigger garage would be very functional. I acknowledge that. But that's just my initial thoughts.
Is that one of our questions though?
Practical
Is that-
difficulty?
Yeah, when we
Yeah.
go through our.
But there's like 4 or 5 or 6
Yeah,
other
all of them.
questions that we have. Well, we've got the hardship. She didn't create it. It's not gonna, it's in the spirit of the neighborhood. It's, so what I'm hearing is don't build a bigger garage. Everything else you can pass, but don't build
Well, she can build a bigger garage, but it's not gonna be as big as she's
No.
asking. She can build up to 481 square
Right.
feet, which is bigger than what's
22
there,
by 22.
but
With the variance,
with the
with the
yeah.
side yard.
Yeah, we would,
Yeah,
yeah.
you'd have to-
and that-
we'd have to
that
do
I
all the
get
other variances.
Is a hindrance and something that, I think does require the variance is to build, keep those setbacks due to, as you explained, the retaining walls, that's, to me, that is, something that, we have to look at respecting that, but as far as, like you brought up, the square footage or the lots, the size for the building, that I don't know if that's necessarily justifiable. I know I have maybe 400 square foot 2-car garage. I feel lucky to have a 2-car garage in the city, but, and yeah, and your plan, you have the limited attic space, which gives you storage, which is really good planning, that you would still be able to have that even if you didn't have a full size garage. But I know it's not easy to have a small double garage. We buy cars with what will actually fit in the garage in mind. It's just part of living in town.
So it seems as though we're talking about the size, which is really the third part of the question, which is
Right.
the lot coverage.
Right, and talking about all 3 basically, but I think they've.
Well, the
explained
retaining
that if you
walls is
rebuild,
one.
it kind of has to be on these retaining walls. Because otherwise it's also gonna affect neighboring properties. So to me, the more debatable part is it justifiable to allow this much more size?
I guess I'd have to say, to me, the root question is what justifies expanding a non-conforming structure and creating further non-conformance? And I think that you have to, for me, despite, you know, sympathy and understanding, I can't answer that question. Maybe somebody can.
But if we reduce it, if it's reduced in size to bring it in,
That eliminates the rear yard variance.
I know.
Doesn't eliminate because just our zoning ordinance, I mean, it says a non-conforming structure, no such structure may be enlarged, altered in a way which increases its non-conformity.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, because I think you got, with what you talk about, the foundation in the corner and holding everything back there, I agree, you've got a practical difficulty that you need for the neighborhood. You know, those foundations shouldn't come out of there. Definitely can see that portion of it. Where I start to have it as a non-conforming structure that's
We keep running into the
Making it-
square footage.
making it,
We keep running into this lot coverage, the square footage.
Yeah.
And we've got a large yard and we still can't meet the lot coverage.
But she would still be able to go, I mean, if the existing one is at 360 square feet. And you said, you know, with the 481.25 is what she's allowed, so she can still.
She could build a
significantly
larger.
larger.
And if there's a way to, because currently I believe I guess it's only a couple of inches that it decreases that rear yard setback to the north. If the rear yard setback that's existing could be maintained and not reduced. and
So
that-
you'd have a 6-inch
No,
off of the.
it would be less, it'd be more than that. The variance would be, excuse me, 6 feet.
Why
It's
is
currently
that
8
being
feet.
reduced just 2 3/4
It's
inches?
the angle of the existing wall, I'm guessing, as you
Oh.
follow it out.
Okay,
But it increases it because then as it follows that wall, it's pushing it out of
Okay.
that set.
Okay,
It's not, it's a couple of
So it's
inches,
not
but it's.
exactly square.
But it
Yeah.
is increasing it. So it's reducing it from 2 feet 8 3/4 inches to 2 feet 6 inches.
it still needs a variance.
the whole thing back there,
Right.
but it's just can she come back with a smaller?
Within the existing setback. 2 feet 8 3/4 inches, and the rear yard variance would not be required. Because it's maintaining the existing setback. It's because that wall goes in closer to the property line and it reduces that setback. That's where the non-conformity, or that's where the increase in the non-conformity comes from. So if they can maintain the existing setback along the
On the rear.
property line where it currently is, the rear of the garage, and not go over what's existing. But I don't know how that happens with that wall, that retaining wall, and how that affects that.
Well, and is that a drafting error or is that a true, is that truly set there?
You
That's.
turn that, now you're taking the
Exactly.
alley side, you're moving it
Well,
farther over on
it's
the alley
a
side.
red pencil, so is
Yeah.
that an angle that's created by the red pencil, or is it just somebody didn't draw it correctly?
Yeah, this is what was submitted, so that's what I have to go off of, so yeah,
Yeah.
I can't say for certain.
Right,
Will they have to come back? with-
and see there's another line there and another line there, so it's.
They have to read it.
If they needed a different variance, yes, if it was outside of, yeah.
So if reducing the size would be easy.
If they, yeah, if they reduce the size, because you need to know what that square footage is, I mean, unless the,
So we could.
allowance is
just
to allow
approve
what
the
the maximum
setback.
allowed. 25% rear yard required the area, that's what's have to be granted, and there's no variance for extra size, they wouldn't have to sign that, they would just have to meet that requirement.
What about
For
the setbacks?
The setback would be,
We're still,
Can I just say one thing about a little information about that back wall, since you're talking about it?
The north.
And then I won't say any more. I just want you
Right.
to know that there is a retaining wall in there because I've gone back in there with my dog. and it's, it's aligned back there with that garage. I'm saying they're connected, that retaining wall that you see here on the
Corner.
this corner.
Yeah.
This and this are connected as if they're holding back the earth from this.
Yeah.
And that's that's the information. Just so you-
Right. So,
What you,
so part of this variance is the setbacks on the building and the lot size perimeter.
Yes.
And if we accept the retaining walls, that's part of the request for the variance. That the retaining walls are non-conforming to begin with.
Right, the structure itself has to be conforming. So in what Jonathan's saying, if I'm understanding correctly, is he's saying that the building needs to be on the retaining wall to
Right.
preserve its integrity.
Right. If that's a
However, they're looking to add on to that retaining wall.
separate,
I know, but that's where the increase in the nonconformity.
I get
comes in.
that.
So.
I get that. I'm trying to break it down so that we're saying that the retaining walls can remain, and it's really
Yes,
the
they're
east
separate.
and the south walls that are creating the nonconformity because of the square footage.
Well, it would actually be the north because that encroaches on that north property setback. Because that wall, when it gets extended out to the east, it's now going out further into that setback and reducing that setback.
Wait, but that's that blue, that's that line that.
Right, that's the wall, but to add the structure to the wall, you're now making the structure non-conforming. So if there's a way to keep it inside and not change it,
the,
I don't know if that's
um,
possible.
If the survey has been done, because I'm looking at a pencil line.
right,
And so if the
There was a survey done. This
but
summer.
on this,
Oh,
the,
yeah.
even and on this, I can't,
it doesn't, and I don't mean to,
that's all right.
it
Well,
doesn't,
for me, it's all right.
there is these couple lines here. He didn't give an exact on it because
So line
it's a
on-
mess.
Right.
To be, there's like fencing stuck in there. All I'm saying is when you, this wall and this wall are joined at the hip.
They're not show,
Right here.
this
He's not
drawing does
showing-
not show this
Right,
wall.
exactly.
Okay, so then the next thing is, what is the width of the existing garage?
I think it's 18 feet, at most 16 feet. And I know that should be on.
Is this to scale?
360.
And she goes 10 feet. It's the scale, yeah.
Wait, it's probably
About
110, yeah.
8, 9 feet wide.
So this is, to read this is 17 feet to here. 16 feet to here.
16 feet,
So
so,
that's 16 feet.
okay,
How, would you mind measuring how deep it is? Jonathan, please?
20. Okay, so again, it's not square.
Right.
So to be at the,
based on
West.
this, we're not seeing, yeah,
he's pretty good with his surveys when he gets to that. 22 and a half feet, I'll say. I don't have inches on here. And 20. Okay, it's 22 and a half feet. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
cocked. It's
22.5
cockeyed.
exactly.
It's square, but it's cockeyed in there. In other words, it's closer here than it is here by probably a
but so
couple
not
inches.
sitting on this lot line, plumb into this lot. line.
Correct.
Okay,
yeah,
so we have a 16 by 22
and a half.
and a half, 22.6.
Yeah, so, and you were saying your number came in, his number came in at 22.6. So she's saying if you did 8 feet that way, that's what you. I shouldn't draw anymore.
But, see, that's the thing, if it was on this setback, line, don't have to worry about a rear setback.
Correct.
If we knew that foundation that you're gonna build on was on that rear setback line, you don't need a variance for that.
Yeah, it is kind of a mess because obviously when these were originally built and they're
Right.
a long time ago, they didn't have lasers that could, you know,
Yeah.
do it as exactly as possible. But
16
in
and
fact,
you can
the
go to
neighbor's
22.
garage, just to the north of
There.
me, that garage sits on my property. It's
Yeah, that's
way,
what it
it's
says
over
it.
the property line, so,
All over town.
yeah, and it's not a problem for any of us, we're like, yeah, okay, we're not gonna change
I'm
that.
just trying to eliminate all the variances that got here. Make it so- If you can get it that works, it's okay, we don't need to be here, but if you could. And then the other part, again, I don't know if that's ZBA, but would Emmett County let you build on that retaining? wall?
That's not
I guess that's not
We
our
don't-
business.
it's not our-
business, so.
its purview.
Good question.
It's, you know, that'd be something that you'd have to
If for
face.
some
if-
reason it was deemed not structural to build on, would they then have to come back? Because then we might say, well, if you can't build on it, we want you to be within.
Yeah, so that would be something that you could put as a condition if you were to
Okay.
allow it, and then it comes back that the
Yeah.
county says they can't and they have to replace it, then
Okay, then they.
that's
yeah.
correct. Laura, correct me if I'm wrong.
Did she hear that?
I think that's right.
Thank you.
That would be good.
Yeah.
That would be a good have to put on. Reduce the size of the garage, so it eliminates. the-
Yeah, then we get rid of that variance and then. we're
And,
just-
and build on the property line on the back lot.
Yeah.
Build on the
The
retaining
only
wall.
variance then you would have would be this one long alley.
Yeah.
If there's a way to, and I don't know,
I don't know.
once you straighten one wall, your other one's now.
Right, I don't know if it's feasible or not.
So,
To build a structure that's not. I think that what we're looking at is a square structure drawn, it's not placed on the property line square.
Sure.
And that's still, can we allow for human error? Is there a percentage of human error that exists in this world? I mean, I've built a lot of buildings and, you know, you can be off by 3 inches and in 10 feet along, that becomes a lot bigger. So, you know, we don't know if it's 2 inches, 1 inch or 6 inches in terms of how unsquare it is on the lot line. And we're arguing over, we could be arguing over 1.5 inches, we could be arguing over 6 inches. We don't have all that precise of dimensions on a plat, and you would probably never get that off of a survey engineer. So I think, to me, it seems that if we have to keep, and they have to build on the retaining wall, if we accept that premise that they have to build on the retaining wall, then we go back to the percentage of the size of the building.
well,
But then you're also building and taking a non-conforming structure and changing
It's
it.
existing, it's
But
historic.
they're removing it.
But
Yeah,
they're-
And it's-
They're not removing the retaining wall.
No,
No,
the building,
the
the
building.
They're
structure.
removing
Right, but the structure itself is what we're talking about. So building the structure they're removing it and then rebuilding it. And they want to rebuild it where it was and add on to it,
Right,
which is would be increasing the nonconformity that's existing currently. But according to the ordinance, once the building's removed, it has to meet the requirements. So if they're removing it, it has to meet the requirements per the ordinance.
you have to meet the setback requirements and the lot and the coverage.
And it
Which
has,
is
yes,
why
correct.
they're here.
The 3 feet, which is not met by the current location, and that's what the variance requests are for, correct?
Doesn't sound like it actually could the physics of it. If you remove the garage, you must comply with the existing zoning requirements on the setbacks. And if it moved it off of the retaining wall, this is, we got a disaster.
Yeah.
right.
So what are the options?
I just, I continue to think that, Kate's original point, of let's go down further the road of non-conformance, non-compliance. Personally, I don't think that that is a wise thing for us to do. Expand a non-conforming use to be a bigger non-conforming use. And so, you know, for that reason, that would be why I would not approve the request.
But are you I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
are we back to this required rear yard? Or are we
No.
just talking about, it seems to me there's two different issues. There's the setback. And we're being asked to approve a variance of the setbacks because of the retaining wall, which has all of those reasons behind it, which makes sense to keep the retaining walls and build on those retaining walls. The other question is the square footage of the building.
Right.
And that's based on the that required rear yard.
Which we
Yeah,
all,
there's two variants.
We
Aspects of it,
agree
correct.
to the definition,
we agreed to that.
and then there's a variance that could be applied if over that definition.
Yes.
So can we break this into two different?
Can we vote for the setbacks, but not the size?
Two separate motions.
Yeah, so it'd have to be two separate motions or.
Yes, yes.
And in the second motion, which is the size, is there a way to put a qualifier that it could, if the garage is reduced in size, that she can come back? Or didn't we talk about that there's a way we can delay the decision on the second variance and give an applicant an opportunity to come back to us with reduction in size?
Sure, yeah, you can invite the applicant to modify their request if you like and have that, considered and adjourn this without further special hearing because it wouldn't increase the impact on anybody.
But if
But
she
to be
reduces the,
conforming, she'd have to build it to the same size that it exists now.
Non-conforming to begin with. So there's no way she can rebuild that garage,
Well, she could, just
not
not
to be conforming.
yeah.
It would be like the other variants that he showed, they rebuilt the garage on the same footing, on the same foundation.
exact same.
So
footing.
This is the case that we have here.
Yeah, that's the case that was presented, that was the same.
So we would still have to we could do the two different motions or two different meetings, whichever they prefer, I guess.
And put in gold.
I think that the two different motions make sense. I mean, vote first on whether we can do and have the setback hearing so that she can, and the issue there is, can she build the new garage on the existing retaining walls? That's the issue there. And then the second motion would be, would you approve an increase above the 481.25 square feet that's allowed by your rear, the rear yard?
So how?
But you're saying you have to
existing
vote on
space is
anything over the
360.
360, right?
Yeah, I guess
Vote on.
if you can build it on the retaining wall, then the 480 is allowed.
That's what I
That's what
thought,
we're
but
saying.
then I thought you had anything over the existing, you have to go non-conforming
No.
because of where it's located.
No, what I was saying is the expansion of it increases the nonconformity for the rear yard setback. So it reduces that rear yard setback. So that's where the increase in nonconformity comes into play.
Okay.
If there's a way to orient the building where it's not encroaching in that setback more than it already is, then that would be compliant. But they could go up to the 481.25 square feet is what it would be allowed at
As long as they
25%.
maintain the setback.
That unless you grant a variance for the rear yard setback.
To be built on
to
the
be built on the
existing retaining wall.
wall, which would increase or decrease the setback. So you'd give a variance of whatever that is.
And then that would, then,
It's in 3 quarters.
so that section we approve be built on the existing retaining wall. Then we can go to a larger square footage.
No, the square footage is based off of the.
Well,
required-
then the 380 existing garage.
No,
No,
no, it's 481.25.
so it would allow them to go up to
25%
481,
coverage allowed.
25.
Right, well, the existing garage is 360 square feet, so if we're basing it on this case study, she can only build a 360 square foot. But if
If
she,
you're basing it on that, but.
Right.
Yeah, if you're doing a complete,
We're not basing it
but
on.
that's not what
Yeah,
we're basing.
yeah, because it's.
I didn't think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so no, they can go up to the 481.25. That would not require a variance. That would be allowed based on your interpretation.
if
Yeah,
it's
could do that
built
in
on the existing retaining walls.
If the variances are granted, then staff could, yes, process the
And
application.
the setback, yeah, the setback variance.
So that then if they didn't find 480 feet sufficient, they could come back here and ask for a variance for a larger building,
Correct.
which would be an increase in nonconformity.
Either way, it's an increase,
Yeah.
Either way, it's an increase.
because we're not eliminating the
Well, that-
setback, we'd have to give. a
No,
variance.
we are eliminating we are giving a variance on the
Yeah,
setback.
she's saying it would increase the nonconformity in the sense that if a variance were granted for more than 481.25 square
Right,
feet.
It would
They're-
increase.
they're-
That would increase-
Yeah,
it would
but the
create-
first one is saying, if you were granting, I'm not saying that this is the motion.
Mhm.
We're granting the variance to reuse the existing retaining walls, which would, and by taking away that setback requirement, or by allowing that as a setback, then they can go up to 480
1.25 square. feet.
2.5
Yeah.
square feet, and that's what we're granting, and then if that isn't sufficient, they would come back for a second variance, but that doesn't change the retaining
Correct.
variance.
Yes,
Okay.
Clear as mud.
There's my
Coffee. So does the board wish to do this in 2 different motions? What's the wisdom?
That was a little muffled, but yes, you should do 2 different motions.
Okay. The first one being the addressing the variance issue.
Should we go through the checklist?
They're both variances, so it's the,
Right,
No.
the setback. Setbacks. Are you gonna be the reader or shall I?
no, you go ahead.
I'm the reader. Oh, how did this go loose? All right, so final decision of the Petoskey zoning board of appeals. For an appeal by right of this decision to be timely, it must be made to the 57th Circuit Court in Emmett County. If the property is located within 30 days of the order. Case number 880, hearing date January 6th, applicant Jane Schneider, 713 Grove Street, phone number 517-303-6H28. Type of request to the ZBA is
Non-use variance.
non-use variance.
Now, Kate, just so you know, on the last page of your agenda memo, there is the list of.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the form that it used to be.
No,
It's listed there.
It's on the, I'm sorry, it's on that.
I know, I kept looking for that.
You give me that little grid, which.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, that's so well.
I can still give you that
Page 3.
future reference if you'd like.
Yeah,
That's the finding of facts, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's all, yeah, it's 6 criteria.
You have an I can't.
Okay.
Says, yeah, it says.
Okay. So we're doing the need for the variance.
Mhm.
So the need for the variance is due to unique circumstances or physical conditions of the property involved, such as exceptional narrowness, shallowness, shape of the area, exceptional topography, conditions or other extraordinary exceptional conditions of the specific piece of property and is not shared by neighboring properties.
Well, we would scratch the exceptional narrowness, shadow, shape and area and keep exceptional topography conditions or other extraordinary.
Yeah, I would say yes.
And
It is, although.
it is affected and does affect the neighborhood properties.
It is shared by neighboring properties also.
And is shared, yeah.
So how does that temper that statement?
So we're rewriting it, right?
No, it's
You
just
would
to help us make our decision, to make sure that our decision
If it
fits
says
within
that
the
they need it
requirements.
due to something unique,
Yeah, which is
but
true,
it's not,
and physical condition
Yes.
of the property.
Retaining wall is unique.
and is not shared by neighboring properties, but the topography is shared by neighboring properties, as Jonathan pointed out, so. So that the exceptional topography affects neighboring properties,
Yeah.
that's true,
So affects the safety of the neighborhood.
affects the safety of the neighborhood.
Definitely unique circumstances and physical conditions.
I would say that this is a yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a
I
yes.
think
Okay.
definitely qualifies.
We need to have, that, is that enough elaboration? Okay. The request is not due to the applicant's personal or economic situation.
Correct.
Correct.
The practical difficulty was not created by an action of the applicant, correct?
Correct.
The requested variance is the minimum variance necessary to grant substantial relief to the applicant, while at the same time minimizing any adverse impacts to other property owners in general and the neighborhood in general. For the zoning district.
I say yes.
I'd say yes.
Can't be moved.
The request, if granted, would not cause substantial detriment to the public good or substantially impair the intent and purpose of the ordinance.
Yes.
The strict application of the regulations would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties.
Yes.
Yes. I'm not sure that.
What was that one again?
Number 6 something.
Well, we
The
talked
strict
about.
application of the regulations would result in peculiar or exceptional practical difficulties.
On the retaining, to not build on the retaining walls and to build inside the retaining walls would create an peculiar and acceptable practical difficulties because of water
But it
runoff.
would create like a trough. And
Yeah, the water's just gonna go right around it and then get stuck at the retaining wall.
So we need to have a motion. And the board states that the findings of fact upon which it justifies the granting of a variance may place and attach any conditions regarding the location, character, and features of the request. Further, the purposes of the ordinance.
Well, this is the, this is, we just went through this only on the setbacks.
Yeah, this is for the setbacks.
Right, so
So this is allowing,
we're granting the variance.
granting the variance for the side yard setback, correct?
And the
Rear yard
setback.
But there is a condition on the rear yard setback.
No, that's a separate one on the rear. It's
Separate.
getting confusing. There's a rear setback and then a rear yard setback.
Okay.
So this is for the rear setback.
All right.
We need to put on there must build upon the existing retaining wall.
That's the condition.
That's the condition.
Right, that's what I was saying.
Aligned with, can I say one thing?
align with the existing retaining wall.
Yeah.
Meaning,
The addition.
you
Or
want
if
it to
there's an
align directly above, so that, not this way or not that way.
Right, so it can't overhang.
Directly perpendicular.
Yeah,
Align, is that the appropriate
Align,
architectural?
Yeah.
okay.
It's a good word.
We are talking
Actually.
about the size of the structure. Am I correct?
Not yet.
We're just
Just
whether the side, the back lot,
The rear and the
So I
side
don't
step
like
back.
that word
Right.
align.
whether,
I wanna take the word align out. Well, but see, that's just me putting my,
And why is that?
well, because you wouldn't want the current, a new structure to be perpendicular, right aligned with the concrete wall, because you're gonna create a water condition. You want it, we want it to overhang that, so we shouldn't have that judgment. We're just saying that the use of the retaining wall as a foundation for the garage. For the new building, we're approving the retaining wall. Okay, where we put the retaining wall as it affects the setbacks. We're not talking about how the garage is gonna be built.
Yeah.
We can't talk about that. That's not our,
the idea of having the superstructure, the building, setting even further off of the retaining wall itself, so that water won't penetrate directly into the retaining wall if it was directly on top. The builders and the physics and the hydrologists know this kind of stuff, I think, better than certainly I do.
well, that's why I didn't like the
But-
word align.
But, superstructure sits right on the retaining wall, does not protrude further in a non-conforming direction. And if there's the need to seal the seam, I'm sure they'll figure out a way. But I sure as heck don't think that, well, we'll put our superstructure on the retaining wall and it needs to overhang, 2-3 inches more in a non-conforming direction.
Flashing.
Well, there's no squeeze on the building, but we're not gonna get into that. It's, so
So what?
Well, so
condition do we
I
have
think
for-
we have to take away any language that suggests that we are telling them how to build on this retaining wall. We are merely approving the change of
Yeah,
setback.
we're approving the setback, but we do need to have, if
Based
the
on-
retaining wall is deemed unstructural, that they need to
Right.
reapply for a variance if they still want
With the size thing is a,
the, yeah.
yeah.
Aren't we setting the precise feet and inches?
No, because we aren't out there with a zoning, with a, whatever that machine is.
So we're approving
Transit.
The transit.
amounts.
Yeah.
So as long as they're within that and they're building on the existing retaining wall, pending that it is structural.
Those,
So should a condition be that the structure is built on the existing retaining wall, provided it is sound?
Yeah, I think this sounds
And
good.
it must be sound, or it must be, is that what
Do
you're
we
saying?
put that in
Yeah,
the zoning? But do we put that into the zoning, a variance?
Well, we can apply conditions, and this is one of the
Yeah,
conditions.
Yeah, I think it's important because then if it's not structural,
they
and
have
it has to
come-
come out, we don't want them to still build out of conformity if it can then be put in.
Right, the whole point is to get them in conformity and
And
build the
possible.
appropriate size so that they don't have to come back here.
Yeah.
Even though it's fun.
Yes. We're all having such a good time.
That's good.
Cocktails at 9:30.
Yeah.
Okay, so it has to be structurally sound and built on the existing retaining wall.
To the requested side and rear yard setbacks.
Did you get that, Lisa?
You guys have a form.
I hope I figured you were gonna make us do that. So the condition is structurally sound.
Setback,
Setback.
setback variances are approved.
You should be specific as to what they are.
So the requested amount is 15 3/4 side yard and 30-inch rear.
So that, so the variance, so a side yard setback variance of 1 foot 8 1/4 inches.
Like you say, 1 foot.
1 foot 8 1/4 inches.
Side yard.
That's the side yard setback variance. So basically that's the variance, that's the difference between what's, well, it's existing,
allowed,
what's
yeah, it's
existing
existing, yeah.
and what's allowed. And then the rear yard setback variance of 6 inches.
So this is what we're approving.
For the setbacks, this is what, this is what the motion is kind of being drafted up to be.
Condition on
Which,
structural.
To allow,
Foundation.
to allow for the new structure to be built on the existing retaining wall.
Does that cover it?
I mean,
With the
that's what
with
they're-
the condition that that wall is structural and with.
And yeah, and you can say that, and then you can say with the following condition or conditions if you have.
Yeah, with the following conditions. So we
And that
approve
was separate from that.
these side yard setback, we approve the your rear yard setback with the following condition or conditions. All right. Somebody,
So you
Or
want.
this, or we're not, but this does not qualify the structural integrity of the retaining wall. This variance. We're not saying anything about the
No.
structural.
No, we're just saying if
integrity
it
of
turns
the.
out it's not, then they need to come
They would
back.
have to need to. comply
We
with the
shouldn't
ordinance.
put into our language that, we should put in our language that this does not constitute any approval of the structural integrity of that, of that.
we don't.
We
retaining
don't
wall.
need to do that because that's not within your purview.
Right.
It's just a
Building
matter of
department.
whether.
That's what I'm saying is, saying it has to be structurally sound. We don't even need
No,
to
we're
say
saying
that,
if it turns out it's not.
but that's
Not to
not,
be.
we wouldn't even know that.
Right, but exactly, but if that happens, we want them to come back. Otherwise, they'll have this variance and they can still build out of conformity because we've passed the variance if we don't add that.
Well, they wouldn't get a building permit if the building department finds that the retaining wall is not structural.
Yeah, but then let's say they
She's saying
remove
that if
it
they
and they
take back-
still wanna build out of.
They tore all that out.
Well, are
Build
we
at the
saying
same
that it has
spot.
to be built on the existing retaining wall?
If we give them this variance, it will be.
Right,
And
so beyond
Yeah.
that, it's not,
But
We don't
then
have-
we risk them still building out of conformity, if for some reason that has to come up. The retaining wall has to get torn out, they'll still have permission to build in the setback that we approved.
I
even
mean,
though
do you
it's
want to
not.
just say in the location of the existing? Does that cover it?
Well, I think the question is about whether we should mention the retaining wall.
Right, and I'm saying if you want to identify the location of it,
Oh,
whether or not
yeah.
the retaining wall is there, it'd be the location of the existing retaining wall. If the retaining-
Right, but we should still mention if for some reason they cannot build us in that location or on that retaining wall, we want them to be able to come back for a new variance or
Well,
they
then
have
they'd
to
have
build
to come back and
within,
build in
or
compliance.
they have to build the compliant.
You understand? Is that clear?
Well, I'm sure that if we find there's some weak spots in that wall, that those can be repaired and shored up before we put a wall on top of it.
Oh, that would be the hope, but this is more
yeah,
like covering.
I
or-
want to do
but
it
It's
in
just a
any way.
thing right now, yeah.
That's,
Yeah, we've had bad experience before with people saying things, something in the.
Oh, we're not clear enough and it leaves room and.
So that's why we're just dotting i's and crossing t's.
I think it's very likely that the same thing that happened before, when the new pad was put in, is gonna happen again, which is they'll come in and they'll pour a lot of concrete behind
Yeah.
that pad, or behind the retaining wall, and put rebar in to make sure that it's gonna support that garage, because we can't build a garage on a retaining wall that doesn't have that.
Exactly, that's what we're saying if for some reason.
We have to articulate.
Yeah,
Right.
Well, so the setbacks are based on the existing retaining
right,
wall
so if we.
and the location of that.
Approve the setback variance, we approve that building location, I'm just saying. You know, because of our past circumstances, if things don't work out as planned. We wanna make sure that it's not still gonna be built in that location.
Do we need to specify? that?
Exactly,
That
so we
these-
do need to bring up the retaining wall
Okay.
because of that.
I think it should be in there.
Yeah,
At the location. of
Not
the
that it's
existing
structure-
retaining-
There you go.
That makes sense.
What did you
What?
say?
At the location of the existing.
right,
Based,
Yeah.
the setbacks are based on the location of the existing
Right.
retaining wall. That's all we're talking about is the setbacks. We're not talking about the rest of
right,
it.
but I'm talking about the
The
condition,
condition.
yeah.
Variances are approved with this condition
Mhm.
that the building is built. Bill, take it away.
At the location of the existing retaining wall.
I agree with that.
There you go. All right,
Good job, Bill.
moving right along.
Then we have to do a variance for the.
So hold on.
Wait, you gotta vote on this one.
Also, do you
Now the
want,
easy part.
do you want to put something in there with a condition that should the retaining wall be found
Yeah, that was my. whole-
non-structurally not viable?
If they're not gonna be able to build it, if it's not viable, they're gonna have to propose a different location. I'm not sure you need to go to say if it is going to fall down, they can't build it in a variance.
Okay,
Okay. So do we have that whole motion?
Get somebody to put that together.
You got it.
I don't have it.
Bill, you have it. You were writing.
Oh, I do.
No, I don't have it.
Do we have to do the finding of facts?
We did.
We
it.
just did.
You have
Okay.
found that.
So we're approving, the motion is to approve the setbacks of 1 foot 8.25 inches on the side yard and 6 inches on the rear yard setback for the new building. I'm gonna get mixed up, to the new building to be erected on the location of the existing retaining wall.
I think you
That was.
I think
what
you
we didn't
approve
want
the
to,
variance and then you say with the condition.
with a condition, okay.
Make a motion to approve.
The setbacks of 1 foot 8.25 on the side yard and 6 inches on the rear yard with the condition that the new building be erected in the location of the existing retaining wall.
I would say plural, walls, because
Walls.
there's one this way and one this way.
Right.
Okay, does that sound good, Laura?
Yes.
All right. So now Lisa, you're going to read it and we're gonna vote.
okay, so Susan, are you rereading his motion or is this your motion? I've lost track of who's.
I think it's.
I think that's.
Okay, so do we have a second?
That's fine. I don't care.
Okay.
Okay. So the approval is for a side yard setback variance of 1 foot 8.25 inches, rear yard setback variance of 6 inches with the condition that the new building be erected at the location of the existing retaining walls.
Much better than what I said.
Okay. All right, and then roll call. Stein,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Yes.
Rusha, Shawnoff.
Yes.
Motion carries.
That was easy.
So,
So now do we need to go through our 6 questions again regarding the size?
Yes.
You have that set of questions.
Yeah.
I think
Hey, do you wanna read those, or do you want me to read them, or?
yeah,
Couldn't find it, there's supposed to be more than, more.
Sorry?
but I have a question about this. This is, the variance is to allow a two-car garage. And we're not approving that variance.
That's what we're talking about now.
Right, okay, so. All right. So what is, so.
So this is a
I guess
variance for
before
lot
you read the questions, we need to know what we're talking about.
Well, because they're requesting 630 square feet, so isn't that what we're talking about?
Okay,
No,
We're deciding whether to approve or not approve their request.
right, that's their request, that's my point.
well, we're not approving that, we're sending.
But that's what we have to vote and
That's
discuss.
Because we're sending them back to,
That's what we've
Do
discussed, but we
conforming.
haven't voted on that or
right,
done
Right.
anything, so we have to go do that now.
And it's getting really late.
Yeah,
And based on the correction, it brought us up to 481.25. We would withdraw the request.
okay.
for those areas.
withdraw the request from the original.
Above, we would, yeah, for the 630, if we can go to 481.25.
Yeah.
We're not gonna have.
Yay.
Yay.
Are you okay with that, Laura?
Yes.
We're so okay with that.
Do we have to like do any formality about that?
No.
We can just kind of dance our way around that one.
You got something.
All right.
We're not done yet.
We're not done
Yeah.
yet.
What?
I wasn't expecting.
We're not done, they're done.
They're done.
There.
Thank you all.
Yes,
thank you for your help.
Thank
For
you,
your
guys.
patience, in case I want to build. As we wade through these challenging
I'll
questions.
see what happens.
We know it's a really sticky
I have
wicket
to jump through.
It is.
and that
Yeah.
that site is very crucial to our little tiny neighborhood.
I have lived here.
Well, I love the garage next to your house. I mean, how did that one pass?
The one.
Long time ago.
With the 2-story garage door.
That
for
one was, he was granted that if he could build it on the same thing, but see, he had no problems because that's the back of his lot, which is only 1 foot there, setback. The side lot is 3 feet, so.
Yeah, the ordinance says that if your lot backs up to an alley, then you can build your garage 1 foot away from the alley.
No, it's
But
the
how,
height.
I have no idea how he did
It's
it.
the height.
We have other business.
Sorry.
We're out of here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, last,
You- Do you guys need me to stay on for the rest of your business, or should I sign off and stop my clock?
You can stop your clock.
Stop your clock.
Comments and questions, so it should be good. Hopefully.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
How'd we do? Did we do better on this?
Yeah. I don't think
It's very thorough, yes, great time.
okay, board members, questions and comments, anything from anyone? I have.
I have an update before you get to your question.
Yeah,
That was your question? Okay,
that's one of
so
them.
Kate had asked me if I could give an update on previous variances that have been granted over the last year. Those are in, 7th meeting on December 2nd. I did speak with the architect and he said they will be coming back and requesting the variance.
That was the
again.
one that had the rear.
It was a
lot,
retaining
and the
lot, but the
people
lighting
way
was-
above were protesting it because it would wreck their view.
No,
Yes.
That was
Visitors were
the Rose
protesting.
Street.
their view?
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
They didn't
Oh.
want to look it down and. see.
Oh, yes, I didn't want to see it, correct. Okay, yes, so that is the one. So they will be coming back.
What was the address on that one?
706 Winter Park Lane. It's a vacant parcel.
Yeah,
Second parcel in on the right.
right.
It's the opposite of what we have normal configuration. It's instead of being narrow and deep, it's wide
Right.
and shallow.
Yeah.
And then 709 Michigan Street was a variance to lift the house essentially and do
Right.
the foundation. I have not received any updates on that. I have not received any applications. That is due to expire on February 3rd.
Okay.
Thank you, Kate. That was a good idea to do that.
Trying to be responsible here. My other comment is, given the work that we had to do trying to define this rear yard setback, required rear yard, would we as a board like to send something to the planning commission and ask for clarification and explain how this was so confusing? I mean, I personally think that if they chose to go to court because of this definition, we could not be supportive.
I think if I was an applicant, I would probably have defined it the same way they did.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't, it seems that
Yes, my answer would be yes.
So basically you can't take any action now
Right.
because it's not on the agenda for discussion or that sort of thing.
okay,
To answer your question, yes, you can make a recommendation as Laura stated, just like you did with the ordinance language. I will be notifying the planning commission of this as well. So, they will be notified of this request for an interpretation and what that ended up being. And then, certainly if you guys want to, next time we meet, if you want to add that to the agenda as something
yeah.
to discuss, as far as potential changes to that ordinance language that can then be proposed, it would obviously then have to go through planning commission and city council.
But I also have, I've told you this, when you read that little thing in the zoning thing, no building can be altered, blah, 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 which, it has to be brought into conformity. And I think you and I have talked about this a little bit. There are buildings all over town that if they are not allowed to maintain them because they are out of conformity, what is the goal? Let them fall into disrepair? I mean,
They're allowed to maintain, it's in there. that they're allowed
well,
to
but they
maintain.
can't rebuild it, on that site.
Right.
Without a variance, and I know that is discussion that has occurred as proposed changes to the new ordinance.
Yeah.
And once that comes to.
And
fruition.
I did listen to the council meeting last night, and one of the council people, Ward 3, Joe Noctra, was talking about getting together with old Ward 3, real Ward 3 people, and who are low income, and saying, shouldn't we as a council create some kind of program which would incentivize repairing substandard homes? But I would be willing to bet that a lot of those homes are out of compliance. So if we have this strict rule that doesn't allow, for upgrading or whatever, I think it's just it's a problem for me. So I don't know if we want to
I-
discuss it.
And this whole yard, this whole square footage of coverage to me is based on, big yards, and nobody can build on a yard, and you can't expand on a yard, and you, and it feels like it's based on old ways of thinking. And I think that's the planning commission is talking about changing that.
Incentivizing, also looking at if they're lower income properties, are they rentals, are they owned?
Right.
Because who do we need to be directing it to? Cause
You
it
can't,
might,
you can't select home ownership, can't.
yeah, I mean, as far as like, I guess you have to direct it to the owner regardless if it's a landlord or some homeowner. But also, what is it considered, cause I know it, like, how much work has to be done for it to be considered a rebuild versus just.
So the way the
maintain?
ordinance states it is if there is, and I'm really super to find the actual language, because I never get it straight. 60% is essentially.
60,
So basically, if the cost of repairs is more than 60% of the cost
Oh, okay.
of the
value.
structure, the value of the structure, then. it has
Based
to be brought into
on,
com-
what's the value based on?
That's actually a requirement that has to be, or information that has to be provided by the applicant. So it's the
Okay.
value of the structure itself.
So they have to get an appraisal?
I believe so.
So if you
That
have,
would be my guess, but I don't know for certain.
so if you have a garage that's 100 years old
Mhm.
and it cost probably $50 to build it.
I believe it's on today, it's not
Replacement cost,
replacement. Okay, yeah, so if it's,
it's listed as replacement
This
cost.
lady could,
okay, wait,
She
we
could
can't,
rebuild.
we can't go there, sorry. that discussion's
But-
over.
But that's, I mean,
So-
those are questions I have
Yeah.
about the future.
Right,
People-
and those are things that they have talked about
Yeah.
changing so that these carriage houses that we do have, that do exist on some of these, these historical structures, that there's some way to try and preserve them
Or just,
versus eliminate
even- yeah.
them or.
even
Um,
like Ted Paul couldn't rebuild his garage. Because it's a small garage and it's probably
Small lot.
on a small lot and, there's no backyard. I mean, it's a little
Mhm.
crazy. Because we want people to maintain, be proud of their old homes and their old small garages or whatever they are. It's nice.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Every year they're less old as we get older.
Yes.
We need
Oh,
a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
That's all.
other question.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't used to do the public hearing thing when
We are doing things
differently.
Was this
But
under
they
advisement from?
Procedurally, maybe could that
Yes,
be
that's-
in the agenda, like, cause I didn't.
Yes, this was new to me as well,
Oh,
so,
today?
yes,
Well, okay,
so I'll make a note to add.
yeah, add it to the,
Hearing to.
What's the procedurally thing that we're doing differently?
opening a public
Public
hearing. when
hearing.
people
Oh,
speak.
okay. They were actually very, very helpful
They
Oh,
were.
yeah, that was
as we
great.
walked through and talked through what we were
think it's
trying
good
to
have it
say.
orderly
Any other
because you never
comments
know
or
what
questions?
pieces can be.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will move to adjourn.
I'll
So
second that.
let me understand that, what are we putting off to our next hearing? The review of the second aspect of their variance?
No, they're gonna try and meet it.
Yeah, they're gonna try to meet what's that 481.
They're gonna try to
Yeah.
do
What's the law?
the 481